Hello there, dear listener. We hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio, a Pan-African Nationalist and Garveyite network into showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
Victor Medicine Podcast.
I think black people require too much buy-in. Like, we constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to get ahead, And we're kind of, continually staying behind.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
It doesn't matter. I think people so dumbed down, it wouldn't matter what you reveal to them. They still are in the matrix. They're in the simulation. They're going to keep doing what they did their lineage. So it really don't matter.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the wasp and his woman.
The Cathedra Chief Show.
When we start rising up to fight our own, I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they're doing. I guarantee you they would have let their brother go. They was waiting to see what black folks was going to do.
Brother Bakari Podcast.
Black people love to claim folks that hate them, right? They're slave masters, and they are ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, if you pray to the same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you may want to reconsider who you praying to,
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Because generally, a welcoming of everyone, sometimes to my consternation, I think that they should be less, welcoming.
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
All right, peace, family. So, welcome back to Mr. Oni, back from the motherland. You already know. We're going to jump right into it. So, technically, I should have done this tomorrow. I should have did this tomorrow, right? But I need to expedite this writing process. So, one of the things that's getting in my way of writing this book is that I'm trying to be thorough and give you all the all, I'm trying to give you the whole truth and nothing but the truth, nothing but the whole truth. You see what I'm saying? So I'm writing this paragraph on communism, and it's actually a silly ass idea. Marxism is a silly ass idea, and I'm going to show you. This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of Engels and Marx, i.e., what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Engels, who's also Marx's partner, if you will, right? I'm going to read him, and I'm going to show you, what the fuck is this shit? Like, this is what you're trying to push on to Africa? But I want people to realize that Engels and Marx were not trying to push this on Africa. They were trying to push this on Europe. Okay? We just happened to look into it and say, you know what, this is all, but we didn't read it thoroughly. When you don't read thoroughly, that's what happens. And some people even opine, some people even explain that realistically, no serious intellectual is attracted to Marxism. But the people who are not seriously looking into the logic of what they're saying are. And so I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. And of course, if there's any disagreement, please leave them in the comments. Please leave them in the chat. Chats. This is a live discussion, So feel free to let your voice be heard whenever it is that you feel like your voice needs to be heard. But other than that, let's jump right into it. This is Engel's Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. This is from Marxists.org. Okay? This is from Marxists.org, so it's not, oh, well, you just got the bad transcription. This is Marxists.org. This is the best transcription that these people could come up with. But before we get started, let me actually remind you guys that I'm an author of a book, and it's a little 10-second clip, and then we can get right into it, okay? All right, so let's get into it. Let's go. So the Monogamous Family. So if you want a backstory as to what he's doing here, he has this chapter in this book on the family, and he goes through the 4 types of families. And before he goes to this family, he goes into the pairing family, right? And then he jumps into the monogamous family. And toward the end, he's going to explain these families again, these family groups again. I mean, I could just press back and show you guys what I'm talking about, but it's, we're talking about the monogamous family. And like I said, you guys the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. And if you want to just go back, you could just, take out parts of it. And the link's in the chat. Okay? So it works out. So the monogamous family, it develops out of the pairing family, as previously shown, in the transitional period between the upper and middle stages of barbarism. Its decisive victory is one of the signs that civilization is beginning, right? So monogamous family equates to civilization, okay? It is based on the supremacy of the man, the express purpose being to produce children of undisputed paternity, right? Which is something that I've heard, brothers say, hey, look, one of the reasons why you would marry a woman is to have undisputed paternity, a lot of women can get pregnant. They can mess with you, they can mess with another man, and they can get pregnant. And then, who's the father? You know what I mean? Such paternity is demanded because these children are later to come into their father's property as his natural heirs. So, and of course, you might say, well, who cares if and I'm just gonna explain everything, okay? But it's like, who cares if the child's mine or not? Well, if you're going to leave stuff to your children, then you care who's the father. Now, if you're not going to leave anything to your kids, that's different. But what he's saying is, look, if you're passing things on to your children, right? Like, take it this way. I got a son, I have a son, and of course, as a father, you might say, how are you going to know if it's undisputed or not? But still, you have a son, right? I have a son. And then let's say I mess with another woman and I have another child, right? Now, I could leave things for my children, right? Or I could just leave things to my son. Right? Now, if both children are mine, then obviously I should leave to both, right? Or I could leave to both. But if only one I know is mine, then obviously I only leave to the one I know is mine. So the point of the monogamous relationship, the point of the marriage would be, hey, look, this kid is absolutely mine, right? But that also requires that the woman is, not sleeping around on you. Of course, he's gonna explain that the woman is probably sleeping around on you. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna explain that. Now, I'm not saying that she is, but that's what he's gonna say here. Lero's here. She says, "Peace, loved one. Peace, my sister, from another mister." Okay. Right, let's go. From another mister, right? We're talking about paternity. Such paternity is demanded because these children are later to come into their father's property as his natural heirs. It is distinguished from pairing marriage by the much greater strength of the marriage tie, which can no longer be dissolved at either partner's wish. As a rule, it is now only the man who can dissolve it and put away his wife. The right of conjugal infidelity also remains secured to him, at any rate by custom. The Code Napoleon explicitly accords it to the husband as long as he does not bring his concubine into the house. And as the social life develops, the exercise his right more and more. Should the wife recall the old form of sexual life and attempt to revive it, she is punished more severely than ever. So what he's saying is this. The man can, and this is actually pretty interesting. I'll tell you guys, just as a personal experience. This is pretty interesting. He's saying, look, In the regular monogamous relationship, the man can sleep outside of the marriage. He just can't bring the woman to his house. And it's weird because sometimes when you talk to the sisters, they say, "Hey man, I'm okay with you sleeping outside the marriage. I'm okay with you sleeping outside the relationship. Just don't bring them into our home, or don't bring them to your house or some shit." You know what I'm saying? Which is pretty interesting. It's just pretty interesting. And the reason why I'm using the word pretty interesting is because this is book, I can't remember what year, but I feel like it's okay, maybe 1884. So it's the fact that people are saying this in 2023, and some of the people I'm talking to, they're on the continent of Africa. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that somebody's saying this in 1884 England makes it pretty interesting. But either way, let's keep going, right? By the way, if you guys have any opinion on this, let me know. But basically, he's saying, look, and also, sorry, I wanted to also add to this. So one of the things that I peeped, right? There's a certain demographic. Or let me say it this way: there are some traditional people in America, right? In this case, in this example that I heard of, it was like the Jewish American, right? The Jewish American they have really tight family structures, okay? Like they have a husband, wife, kids, the whole shebang. But I was told from the sister, because I was talking to the sister, she looked cute, so I was trying to chat with her. Didn't get nowhere, but I was trying to chat with her, and she said, "Yeah, there are some dudes who were when I was walking under this bridge here in Brooklyn, there were some like Jewish American type dudes who were trying to holler at her because they figured she was a prostitute." And what I learned was that even though these people put up a front of family values and so forth, they were trying to hit up sisters who were prostitutes. And I say that because at the time I didn't really think much about it, but it kind of is consistent with this whole idea that, hey, look, a man can sleep with a concubine as long as you don't bring her outside the house. Because if you hitting up a prostitute, you bringing her to a hotel or something. A hotel. You know what I'm saying? Of course, that's just common sense. But it is it is what it is. And by the way, you can actually get a bunch of hoes at hotels. I hope you guys know that. I mean, I don't hope you guys know that. I'm just giving y'all an FYI that a lot of hoes hang out at hotels. So maybe there is some sort of etymological value in that word. I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know, because for what it's worth, like what is a hoe? A hoe is like a garden tool. So I don't know why they even call women hoes, but it might just be, hey, I don't know. I don't know which came first, the word hoe or hotel, but it is what it is. We meet this new form of family in all its severity among the Greeks. So he's like, hey, look, the Greeks come up with this monogamy, right? And here's where, like, that's why I can't even mess with angles, because the ancient Africans had monogamous relationships, right? This parent relationship he's talking about, I don't even know what he's talking about. I mean, you could go back and look what he says, but this, and I'm not saying I know, I've looked a little bit of it into it, but we had this monogamous relationship, but instead he's like, hey, look, the Greeks, and the thing is this too, what people don't understand about the Greeks is that a lot of their philosophy comes from the ancient Egyptians. Okay? A lot of their philosophy comes from the ancient Egyptians. Some of you guys call them Kemet too. But my point being, a lot of their philosophy comes from ancient African people. But when it comes to the European mind, and that's fine, the Eurocentric mind, if you will, right? It's okay to be Eurocentric if you're European, right? It's just not right when you African and you Eurocentric. But the thing is, when you come into like they do not take into account the true historical lineage, the true intellectual lineage of certain ideas, and in so not taking that into account, you fall into your Eurocentric mindset. If you ever do, you don't take us into account, and that's where the problem begins. But let's keep going. Let's keep reading, and I hope you guys are enjoying this. It's not too long a reading, although I'm probably gonna make it a little longer because you know how I am. But I appreciate y'all being here. I got 2 people. And of course, I shouldn't say that for the playback. I know the playback wants to think that there's a million people. but it is what it is. Let's go. We meet this new form of the family in all its severity among the Greeks. While the position of the goddesses in their mythology, as Marx points out, brings before us an earlier period when the position of women were freer and more respected. See, he's saying Marx, right? You see, in the heroic age, we find that women are already being humiliated by the domination of the man and by competition from girl slaves. So he's like, look, goddesses in their mythology, in the Greek mythology, brings before us an earlier period when women were freer, right? But in the heroic age, okay, there's the heroic age of the Greeks. He says the women were already being humiliated by the domination of the man and by the competition with the girl slaves. So basically, men can go outside and get their women, right? So he says, get outside and get a girl who has no liberties, right? So. And by no liberties, I don't mean like that. I mean like she's enslaved or something, right? So note how and notice again, these quote unquote enslaved women are not even not even Africans. They're Europeans. So, and this I say this to remind you that of the African proverb: if a crocodile eats its own eggs, what do you think it will do to the flesh of a frog? Okay, so just remember, whatever it is that whatever bad a white person does to a white person, you have to imagine what will they do to an African. Okay, and that's where you have to just, when you're reading these white folk, this is the important thing. When you're reading these white folk, when you're seeing what white folk do, just pay attention, because this means that they would do worse to you if you let them. And the thing is this, you're gonna let them. If you ain't hip to that. When you see white folk bombing other white folk, okay? If you want to call them brown or not, whatever. But if you see white folk bombing other white folk, understand, look. You know what I'm saying? Alright. So note how Telemachus in the Odyssey silences his mother. References to a passage where Telemachus, son of Odysseus, and Penelope tell his mother to get on with her weaving and leave the men to mind their own business. Exactly. No, I'm just oh my gosh. Lero's going to be like, wait a second. I did that for Lero. All right. In Homer, young women are booty, okay, and are handed over to the pleasure of the conquerors, the handsomest being picked by the commanders in order of rank. The entire Iliad, it'll be remembered, turns on the quarrel of Achilles and Agamemnon over one of these slaves. So it's interesting. Achilles and Agamemnon are arguing over who could get the girl capture, right? If a hero is of any importance, Homer also mentions the captive girl with whom he shares his tent and his bed. Okay, so there's when Homer's bragging about... So Homer's the author, by the way. He's not that guy from The Simpsons. But when Homer's talking about, oh man, Agamemnon, he's so cool, man. He's sharing his tent with a pretty girl. You know what I'm saying? Okay. These girls were also taken back to Greece and brought under the same roof as the wife, as Cassandra was brought by Agamemnon in Aeschylus. Damn, he brought on the same roof as his wife. I don't read Homer, so I'm a little excited. I'm a little, not excited, but, I'm just like, what the fuck am I reading? The sons begotten of them received a small share of their paternal inheritance and had the full status of freemen. Teucer, for instance, is a natural son of Telamam by one of these slaves and has the right to use his father's name. The legitimate wife was expected to put up with all this, but herself to remain strictly chaste and faithful. In the heroic age, a Greek woman is indeed more respected than in the period of civilization, but to her husband she is after all nothing but the mother of his legitimate children and heirs, his chief housekeeper, and the supervisor of his female slaves, whom he can and does take as concubines if he so fancies. It is the existence of slavery side by side with monogamy, the presence of young, beautiful slaves belonging unreservedly to the man, that stamps monogamy from the very beginning with the specific character of monogamy for the woman only, but not for the man. And that is a character it still has today. And he's not capping. Okay? Now, I want people to understand this, though. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna read angles. So one thing I'll give you guys a little backstory about me. So about 10 decades ago, matter of fact, sorry, well, not 10 decades, my fault. Maybe 2 decades ago, right? Right, about 100 years ago. So about 2 decades ago, maybe a little after that, but I could have been in high school, low key. So maybe like 15 years ago. Actually, no, I was in high school like 20 years ago, right? So yeah, I came across angles. I might have actually came across this book. I ain't even gonna hold you guys. And I was like I peeped that it was a feminist book. Right? Now, the thing about it being a feminist book, though, was that at the time, I wasn't necessarily against feminism. Okay? I was just, it was just an intellectual curiosity. Okay? And that's the way how life is sometimes. When you're young, a lot of things, a lot of ideas are just intellectual curiosities. So I peeped him and I was like, dang, this guy is saying something. Like, he was talking about domestic violence probably in another section of this book, and he was like, yeah, the reason why domestic violence is happening is because, the proletariat is getting, beat up at work by the capitalists, so he comes home and beats up his wife, because he can't beat up the capitalists. But if you change his political perspective such that he's now aiming towards, beating up the capitalists, he's not going to beat up on his woman, right? Now, that's just like, again, 2 decades ago, so that's not really what he might have said. In retrospect, he might have said something along the lines of if you abolish private property and so on and so forth, the woman and the man don't even have to live together. And that's kind of like the argument he's going to make here. And I don't know if he's going to talk about domestic violence here, but my point is this. This is going to be some feminist literature. It's also going to be some anti-racist literature. But what I want you to come away with, one of the perspectives I want to add to you is, let's look at this from let's try to look at this a little more objectively. Okay? And by a little more objectively, what I'm saying is this, right? What if, okay, you see a pretty woman. You're a man, and you see a pretty woman, and you destroy her livelihood. Okay? Like you're a conqueror, they said, right? Yeah. Oh no, he's a commander or something, right? Let me see. I think my mouse is unplugged. Hold on a second. So for some reason, this thing is. Let me see if I can fix this really quickly. All right. Okay, we're back. All right. Sorry about that. I tried to unplug the mouse and thing. Brother Macari says peace and black power. I didn't get a notification. Peace, brother. Yeah, I just kind of slipped on. I'm supposed to be on here tomorrow, but I just figured I got to get this thing out of the way. This reading, but yeah, peace to the brother. So check this out. So he says the legitimate wife expected to put all. So yeah, I mean, again, you go into another people, you capture you capture people, or basically you destroy you kill their husbands, right? You kill their husbands and their brothers. You destroy their household, whatever. Now you leave behind women, children, and men who might not be able to fend for themselves because of what you did. Now, what do you do after that? Now, one way to do it is that you could take them back to your country, okay? But if you're taking them back to your country, right, and one of them is cute, and I'm not saying that obviously, some people could say, hey, well, look, that's clearly, an abuse of your power. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing about the world. It's like, yeah, people are abusing their power all the time. And I mean, obviously, this is not the generation that we're in. This is not something that we are necessarily partaking in. That's something that we're necessarily participating in, right? And so a lot of times, you look at life from the perspective of, well, I wouldn't do that if I were in a, modern city. You know what I mean? This is a world 3,000 years removed from modern cities. And plus, I don't think it's a real story. I mean, I don't know. As far as I know, it's not. Agamemnon and Achilles. This guy Achilles is invulnerable except for the fact that his foot is whatever. So really, what they're telling you is that he found himself a good wife outside of his homeland. You know what I mean? And then of course he brings his wife to see his other wife. And you might say, well, why does he have two wives? And like the reality is this: if you like for instance, here's my life. I'll tell you guys this: I could get me a wife in Tanzania. Okay, I could get me a wife in Tanzania. All right, but now I'm in America. Now what? You know what I mean? So I'm sitting here. I ain't gonna hold you guys. I guess I left the place a little bit messy. This place is not cleaning itself. And you might say, well, Oni, why don't you clean it why don't you clean it yourself? Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. But it's taking me a minute. Now, like this guy is saying, right here, you got the woman who is, to her husband, she is nothing but the mother of the legitimate children and heirs, which is a good thing to be. Somebody who's taking care of your heirs is a good thing. Your chief housekeeper, which is good, right? You have because see, all the work I put into housekeeping is now minimalized for me. If somebody else is just a chief in housekeeping in that sense, right? So I can say this, for instance, in Tanzania, let's say my wife, okay? My wife did not, she didn't really clean that much herself. Like, she did clean occasionally, but then she hired some help to clean occasionally. So she was the chief housekeeper. She wasn't, the housekeeper. She was the chief housekeeper. And, of course, supervisor of the female slaves. And I'm not saying that the girl who was helping in the house was a slave per se, because we obviously paid her. But again, this is also a matter of, different economy, different economics, and also different economy. You know what I mean? Or different economic brackets. A person who is like, for instance, we pretty much had a rent-in house cleaner, right? But if I were rich, I might have. Oh, in fact, not even if I were rich. What I'm saying is that a lot of people had domestic servants where we were. You understand? And these were usually young girls. Now, they weren't slaves per se, but again, what we have to, one of the things we have to realize too when we use the word slaves is that there's a connotation that we tend to attach to it that, because of what America did, the chattel slavery in America and Brazil and so on and so forth, that we tend to attach that big negative connotation to it. But slaves could have just been unpaid labor. And the thing is this, remember that before wages, a lot of labor was unpaid. You understand? Before wages, a lot of labor was unpaid. You understand? But it's just a really complicated question. But as for this right here, the specific character of monogamy for the woman only, a lot of women that I've met, particularly in Africa, they are perfectly fine with monogamy for the woman only, or at least they say they are. And a lot of women, even if we're talking, like for instance, like Muslim women would say they don't believe in monogamy for the man. Now granted, this could be because they have that Islamic mentality, but it's just a pretty interesting thing when you look at it. Like, well, to what extent is this capturing the to what extent is this useful? To what extent does this speak to biology? To what extent does this speak to to what extent is this shaped by the economy? And of course, that kind of explains, that kind of comes into the question of what do Marxists have against monogamy? Because again, if you're passing things on to your your children, that's going to come into your economic considerations. Brother Makari says, I'm doing a part 2 of last night. When you're done, you're welcome to join. Yeah, I'll go for sure. So y'all know where I'm going to be when this is finished. Although this is like it might be a little longer because I think I like the 2 paragraphs in and it's already 30 minutes. All right, so coming to the later Greeks, what's the distinction between the Dorians and the Ionians? Among the former, Sparta is the classic example. Marriage relations are in some way still more archaic than even in Homer. They recognized form of marriage in Sparta was a pairing marriage modified according to the Spartan conception of the state, in which they still survived vestiges of group marriage. Childless marriages were dissolved. King Anaxandrius, whose first wife was childless, took a second and kept 2 households about the same time. King Ariston, who had 2 unfruitful wives, took a third, but dismissed one of the other 2. On the other hand, several brothers could have a wife in common. Isn't that so gross? A friend who preferred his friend's wife could share her with him, and it was considered quite proper to place one's wife at the disposal of a sturdy stallion, as Big Mark would say, even if he was not a citizen. Passage in... So you see that. So they're saying, look, in Sparta, they were like, hey, look, man... So, I mean, this is another thing to remember, too. So, this is why I say, like, sometimes you can't go by imagination. You got to go by real life, right? A lot of the examples of polygamy in ancient Egypt, right? Because me and his brother had this argument, and he was like, oh, man, polygamy is actually ancient African. Because look at this, they're doing it in ancient Egypt, right? And a lot of the documentation would tell you that, no, they did not have... Like, monogamy was the rule in Africa. Monogamy is the rule throughout Africa. But polygamy came into ancient Egypt in two ways. One, it came with the foreigners, obviously, who practiced polygamy, like he's showing you the sharing of the wife between brothers. They had polygamy, and they had all sorts of polygamy. They had sharing wives as well as sharing husbands, right? But the other part of this is that the other part was. The other examples of polygamy in ancient Egypt were 2. One was if the man was a widower or whatever. I don't know what you call a man whose wife dies, but I think it's a widow. I don't know. But I don't remember. I don't think it's widow, but it is what it is. But if the man married, like the man's wife died and he married another woman, then, they would list his, he had 3 wives, right? Because, 2 of them died, right? That was one example. The other example is if the man or the woman was not producing children. Okay? I mean, obviously, still another example is if the man just wanted a lot of children. If a man wants a lot of children, he could get a lot of wives, right? But so I guess those are 3 different examples. But my point being that you got to go by real life. Real life, it's like this. I have me, let's say I got me a wife in Tanzania. Let's not say that, but let's say, all right, no, matter of fact, let's just give another example. Let's say, as a man, I want a child let's say I marry a woman and then she doesn't produce children. Like after 5 years of us trying, and we trying, right? She doesn't produce any children. Then it comes to the point where, look, lady, I married you so that I could have children and I could pass things on to my children. Right? So we're going to have to work out. I need to have a second marriage. You understand? I need to have a second marriage or a third marriage. Otherwise, I will not have any descendants. The only reason why Now she might be like, well, I'm not gonna have any descendants either. Well, that's because you unfruitful. You understand? But that shouldn't be on the both of us. And realistically, a woman would understand, because another thing that people don't realize is that children are an asset. Children are a valuable asset. In 20 years, you ask me, I'll tell y'all this. 20 years. Well, no, I'm still gonna be young, but let's say if my youth leaves, or let's say I fall down, which of y'all gonna pick me up? See, because my son, if I fall down, my son's gonna drop what he's doing and come pick me up. Which one of y'all gonna drop what you're doing, leave your family and whatever, and come pick me up? You understand? And that's what children are for. Children, when you, because you wipe your child's ass, right, when they're young, and they wipe your ass when you old. Before my mother passed away, I can tell you guys this. Yeah, she fell down. You know what I'm saying? She fell down. I had to come pick her up. I had to carry her to the hospital. And not like, oh, well, you know, I ordered an ambulance or ordered, no. I lift her, like I walked with her limp body to a hospital. I had to hold her up, her whole body weight. You know, I had to dress her. You know, she was naked. I had to shower her, all that kind of stuff. I did that because that's my mother. Now, everybody else, you know, they say, hey, man, you know, what you need to do. You know, and if you talk to anybody, if you called anybody, hey, my mom's doing this, they're like, yeah, okay, what you need to do. Nobody was like, oh, I'm on my way. Nobody came. They're like, hey, what you need to do is you need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do this. That's your mom's, man. You get what I'm saying? And they wasn't wrong. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, you know, as far as the question or concern of the argument of, oh, well, you know, why would a man, like, what's wrong with an unfruitful wife? You need children. You need children. Alright, on the other hand, several brothers, but yeah, sharing your wife with your brothers, that's kind of weird, but that's what the Europeans do. You know, once upon a time, I used to write about how the Europeans, like how the Asians really were the polygamists, like were the ones that shared husbands, whereas the Europeans kind of shared wives, you know, or they shared women. You know, that's what prostitution is really. It's like sharing women, right? But so a passage in Plutarch, but yeah, he's also saying that, you know, the man might give his woman. See, this is that buck shit, you know, not buck shit. What do y'all call it? Cuckold shit. It's considered quite proper to place one's wife at the disposal of a sturdy stallion. That's that cuckold shit. Back in the ancient Greek, like I said, when in one of my writings, I used to write that the Europeans were all about sharing husbands. No, sharing wives. Whereas the Asians, like the Middle Eastern people, they were about sharing husbands. You know? But like you could peep that. Now I don't try to distinguish between the Europeans and the Asians anymore. Or the Western Eurasians and the Central Eurasians. I just call them Eurasians. But like back in the day when I did, it was like I peeped that inside of Joe's book, and you could see it even in angles, right? But anyway, let's keep reading. A passage in Plutarch where a Spartan woman refers an importunate wooer to her husband seems to indicate, according to Shaman, even greater freedom, right? Real adultery, secret infidelity by the woman without the husband's knowledge, was therefore unheard of. So he's like, hey man, these women used to, you know, they used to tell their husbands, oh yeah, you know, this guy's trying to fuck me, which is you know, shit. On the other hand, domestic slavery was unknown in Sparta, at least during its best period. The unfree Helots were segregated on the estates, and the Spartans were therefore less tempted to take the Helots' wives. Unfree Helots were segregated. Okay. Inevitably, in these conditions, women held a much more honored position in Sparta than anywhere else in Greece. The Spartan women and the elite of the Athenian Hatiari are the only Greek women of whom the ancients speak with respect and whose words they thought it worthwhile to record. The position is quite different among the Ionians. Here, Athens is typical. Girls only learned spinning, weaving, and sewing, and at most a little reading and writing. They lived more or less behind locked doors and had no company except other women. The women's apartments formed a separate part of the house on the upper part of the back, where men, especially strangers, could not easily enter, and to which the women retired when men visited the house. They never went out without being accompanied by a female slave. Indoors, they were kept under regular guard. Aristophanes speaks of Marceline dogs kept to frighten away adulterers, and at any rate, in the Asiatic towns, eunuchs were employed to keep watch over the women-making, and exporting eunuchs was an industry in Chios as early as Herodotus' time, and according to Washmuth, it was not only the barbarians who brought the supply. In Euripides, a woman is called an okorema, a thing, the word is neuter, for looking after the house, and apart from her business of bearing children, that was all she was for the Athenian, his chief domestic servant. So, again, I want people to just look at this a little more objectively. Now, granted, we don't really agree with this here in the West. We don't agree with this in the West. Although I do want to say that this is interesting. This is also something that Chick on the Joke was writing about. And he was talking about how essentially, quote unquote, sexism, originates in the West for whatever reason. And, the man, and of course, the white man hates his woman because of so on and so forth. But this is a thing too. It's like this, because he's going to talk about it. Like, do you want women in public industry or do you want them in private industry? And to what extent do you want your wife engaging with other men? You know what I mean? Like, to what extent do you want your wife engaging with other men? Forecast says, "What up, y'all? What up, Forecast?" Brother McCarty says, "Take your time." He says, "Take your time," and he's listening. But what I want to say is that, to what extent do you want your wife to engage with other men? And that's the real question that a lot of us, because honestly, I'm saying it this way. Like, let me go into the African perspective, right? Do you want African women engaging European men? Like, do you want them working for European men? Do you want them interacting with European men? And the reality is this: if you want that of your women, that's fine. That's what you want. But I don't see how, if you are quote unquote at war, right? Or even say it this way: do you want not just your women, obviously, but if you're at quote unquote at war, right? Who do you want at the front line? That's a question. Who should be on the front line of this war? Who should be in the front line engaging the quote unquote enemy? Because if you're like, hey, look, you know what? I'm gonna put my women on the front line. I'm gonna put my children on the front line. Then when they are attacked and assaulted and molested and raped and hurt and so on and so forth, when they are hurt by this enemy, what were you doing? So a part of this has to come back to, well, what if these men right here do not want their girls, do not want their women on the front line of an antagonistic situation? And how do you protect them? Now that does say, oh, I'm going to put a big restraint on your woman. That's true. It does say that. It does mean that. But it comes back to, well, for every joy there's a price to be paid. If I want to stay safe from white folk, I don't go outside. But I understand if I go outside, I'm taking a risk, and if I engage in these white folk, that's the truth. But I take that risk so that a woman doesn't have to. You understand? I take that risk so that a woman doesn't have to. And then here's the other part of it. The truth is this. The truth is this. A man and a woman get together. A man has a child with a woman. Who has to take care of the kid? Now you might be like, hey man, the man has to take care of the kid. Or they both have to take care of the kid. Who really got to take care of the kid? Is she being realistic? You know? Now, ideally, you'd say, hey, man, the man got to step up. And sure, I agree that the man has to step up. But a lot of times, here's the thing about this situation, too, with these girls and, let's say, not behind locked doors, right? Who's the father? Who's the father of the kid? If she's sleeping around, who's the father of the kid? We know who the mother is. You know? And remember that this is not from a time period. This is not from the same time period as us. So today we'd be like, yo, I know who the father is. Take the fucking test. What test? This is 650 BC. What test are you talking about? 650 BC is 2,600 years ago. What test are you talking about? You know? But anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. So the women's so I'm just saying that when we're looking at these people and how they form their civilization, of course, we're not necessarily agree with them. But one of the things I want to do is to just say, hey, look, even though we are being subjective, let's try to be objective for a second, just to understand their subjectivity. You know, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to live it. You don't have to do it because again, like we have technology. You know, you can easily just take a blood sample from the kid and be like, oh yeah, that's the father, right? But what I'm saying is, look at it from an objective look at it from a subjective standpoint in the sense of, okay, it's Athens in 2600 BC. Right? There's none of the modern technologies that we have today is advanced is at hand, and this is a civilization that has slaves. You know? So yeah, if you want to have children, you want to have children, you marry a woman. So anyway, the man had his athletics and his public business from which women were barred. So again, you have this women barred from public business, but again, you gotta the thing I always pick peep on is like when a man and a woman get into a debate or an argument, right? And actually, let me make this thing a little bigger for you guys. When a man and a woman are getting into an argument, if they're both in the public eye, right? It makes it a little bit more reasonable. It makes it a little bit more, oh yeah, they get into an argument because she's involved in the public arena. Now I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example from recent times. So this was like the most awkward thing for me. I listened to like about 2 minutes of it, or maybe 1 minute of it, like half of it. And I couldn't listen anymore. But there's this guy, I think his name is Party. Okay? And this shout out to Lero. She says that we talk about celebrities, even though we so on and so forth. Now, I actually didn't talk about this before, but I'm going to try to talk about it now. But this guy named Party, and so apparently he was dating Meg the Stallion. And I don't know the full story, but this dude does the most awkward shit on the planet. Okay? He does a battle rap against Meg the Stallion. And it's the most, it's sad shit. Like, I listened to like 2 minutes of it, and I just couldn't listen anymore. But, like, he does a battle rap, and it's like, why are you battle rapping a woman? And I mean, I know that sounds like it's sexist or something. It's not. I'm just saying, like, because from my perspective, a woman should be protected. Right? And in my perspective, you, like, denouncing a woman in public, just like, what is that about? And, like, not just denouncing it, but, like, doing this emotional, oh, man, then you slept with another man. Like, shut up. Like, shut up. Like, that's the most, like, that's such a weak response to, like, it's so lame. It's so corny. But, like, that's what we're asking for when we say men and women are in the public business. Right? Because now, all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, you should battle rap a woman, because why not? You battle rap a man. But like at some point you got to say to yourself, no, and so here's the thing. When you talk about public business, let me say this right here. So when it comes to public business, you could undercut your business competition. Or you could attack your business competition. You could go to, let's say I got a bread shop and you got a bread shop right across the street. I could go and poison your bread. Or I could go and throw your bread on the floor and just hire a bunch of goons to, beat you up when you get out of work. That's fine if you're a man. If you're a woman, it's not fine. It's weird. So it's like, yeah, like, do you want men beating up on women? And that's a big question. And it's like, yeah, if you feel like women should be involved in public business, sure. If sure, but like, then it becomes, well, like, what's the point? And then of course, you have the other need of, well, what about the balance in the household? How do you accomplish balance in the household without this sort of this sort of stuff, spinning, weaving, and sewing? Like, because here's the thing too. I gained a little weight. I gained like 20 pounds. Tried to put on my shirt the other day. I guess I put it on too quickly. I don't know. That thing ripped at the back. You know what I'm saying? That thing ripped at the back. The fact that it rips at the back, though, I don't know what to do with the shirt. I'm going to throw it away. I'm about to throw the shirt away. Because I don't know weaving and sewing and spinning. Now, granted, you might say, why don't you just learn spinning and weaving and so on and so forth? Okay. Why don't I? Like, why don't I just learn everything? Instead of saying, hey, this is actually a useful thing. And maybe, like, maybe this would be a nice thing to have around me. Maybe having somebody helpful in your life is not a bad thing. Somebody helpful to you is not, because that's another thing that we have to realize too. Most everybody wants help in this human society, in this human civilization. And maybe you might say, well, why should a woman? Well, it's like this. There's an exchange here. I want people to understand there's an exchange here. You pay her bills, and she'll fix your shirt and your meals. And you might be like, well, she's fixing your shirt. And yeah, you paying her bills. Like, what's it? like you're doing something too. And then you both give each other good sex. What's the problem? That's a lot of people don't realize. Like, what's the big problem? But we're taught, and part of the people teaching us are these Marxists, by the way. But we're taught, no. Let her do all the work too. Right? And he's actually going to tell you that you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems in your life if the both of you are working. He's going to tell you this. And again, this is not 2023. This is not 1988. This is 1884. He's going to tell you that when the proletariat wife and the proletariat husband are working, the man loses his authority in the household. And that's the problem that you're always going to have. You as African people. I'm talking to you. You, because your wife is working and because you're working, you're going to lose authority in your household as a man. Because the justification for you having authority in the household was the fact that you was working. And she wasn't. And see, when I was in Africa, the woman I was living with didn't have to work. And I'm not saying I had absolute authority. If I told her to jump, she was like, shit, I win. But even so, what I'm saying is that the justification for my authority could have been, oh, well, you have to work. Now, granted, I wasn't working either, and that was a big problem. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I can't even, whatever. So I see Lero got off. Lero! No, I'm joking. Lero's like, this motherfucker's all right, so anyway, let's keep reading. Where are we at? This is pretty interesting, though. They never went hunted by female slave indoors. They were kept under regular guard. The man had athletics and power business. The women were barred. In addition, he often had female slaves at his disposal. And during the most flourishing days of Athens, an extensive system of prostitution which the state at least favored. It was precisely through this system of prostitution that the only Greek women of personality were able to develop and to acquire that intellectual and artistic culture by which they stand out as high above the general level of classical womanhood as the Spartan women by their qualities of character. But that a woman had to be a hetaria, and this is basically a prostitute, before she could be a woman is the worst condemnation of the Athenian family. So basically he's saying that, some of the people who developed the best characteristics, the most quotes and the most famous women were prostitutes in Athens. And that's a condemnation of Athenian family. Now again, but you see, there's twofold to it. Again, I don't really care, because again, this is 2,500 years ago. This is fucking Europe. Nobody gives a shit. But it's just a weird criticism, is what I'll say, because essentially the Marxists have a style where they're arguing something to say something else. You get what I'm saying? And basically what they're saying is, the development of the woman, like the woman should be, a certain way, so on and so forth. And remember, this doesn't really apply to African people. African women held, big political status, big public status. They had their beautiful lives and their domestic, whatever, so on and so forth. They had that. This is really just talking about Europeans. But you got to realize that the Marxist has an objective. And in fact, I'll show you guys the quote. But the Marxist has an objection of destroying and taking over Europe. Okay? Now, granted, as an African, I don't really care that they're trying to destroy or take over Europe, but I want you guys to pick up on that. And so their whole argumentation is not sincere. It's really, how can we destroy these other people? How can we convince these people to destroy themselves? And so I'll show you guys. This is the Communist Manifesto, again, from Marxist.org. This is the last paragraph. Okay? The last paragraph is, the communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. We're not keeping any secrets. This is Marx himself. They openly declare that their ends can be obtained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Okay? They are trying to forcibly overthrow all existing social conditions. And they're talking about Europe. They say, let the ruling classes tremble at the communist revolution. The proletariat have nothing to lose but their chains. They have the world to win. Working men of all countries unite. And you might say, well, how do you know it's only Europe? Because again, this is the last chapter, chapter 4. Positions of the communists in relation to various existing opposition parties. And he's going to talk about the various existing opposition parties. And he's like, in France, in Switzerland, this is what we're doing in Switzerland. This is what we're doing in Poland. This is what we're doing in Germany. And at some point he's going to say England, I think. I don't know. This is still Germany. This is England right here. This is what we're doing in England. You see, under the more advanced conditions of European civilization. You know what I'm saying? This is what they're about. They're on that time. They are trying to overthrow the European, Europe, right? Which again is not the worst thing on the planet. But now you have to read what they're writing with the explicit knowledge, or with the implicit knowledge, that they're really just trying to overthrow all existing social conditions. So now you got to ask yourself, why are you overthrowing these social conditions? Now, and these are already extinct social conditions. You see what I'm saying? Because he's talking about the historical lessons. He's going to soon get into Germany later on. But you guys got to read it and say, well, let me try to understand this before you, it's like before you break down a fence, try to understand, before you break down a fence, try to understand why it was put up. You understand? And so he's saying, hey, look, these women were not developing their personalities for the public business. Okay, but to what extent do you want women in public business? If it means that they could be assaulted or victimized, or like let's say for instance, for being honest, politicians, they get assassinated, or radicals get assassinated. Like y'all remember what happened with Asada Shakur, Now this woman, if you don't know, actually, I don't know if she was shot or not, but she might have been shot actually. But let's say she was shot, she was beaten up, she was near killed in prison, she was tortured, she was abused, she was arrested, she was put away for she was falsely accused of murder. She was on the front line. Okay, she was, and then she was arrested, and then what happened was that these brothers came in and they broke her out of jail, and they ended up going to prison for, until now, and they broke her out and they put her to Cuba. But the question is this: why do you want your sister to go through that? Okay, now your brother, okay, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Your brother, okay, I get it. But why do you want your sister to go through that? And so, because a sister went through that, the brothers did come through and break her out of prison, but then they ended up in prison. You understand? So it's like, that's another thing that we have to just come to terms with. And this stupid freaking mouse. See, what happens is if I accidentally unplug my other thing, my microphone, then you won't hear me. But then, or it takes a little while to fix. But anyway, let's go. All right, so in the worst condemnation of the Latino family. So you got to see that because they're trying to destroy the European way, and why they're trying to do it, it's complicated. I think I'll tell you guys about it another day. But I'll tell you guys about it in my next book. But or I'll tell you what some of the theories are in my next book. But but that's what it is. That's what they're trying to do. And again, I'm not making this up. This is literally the Communist Manifesto on Marxist.org. You see what I'm saying? It's not, Oni, you just don't understand. This is literally what they put up as the English translation. That, we're trying to overthrow all existing social conditions. Why doesn't anybody like us? Anyway, the Athenian family became in time the accepted model for domestic relations, not only among the Ionians, but an increasingly extent among all the Greeks of the mainland and colonies also. But in spite of locks and guards, Greek women found plenty of opportunity for deceiving their husbands. And you see what I'm saying? So these women would stay outside. They stay on the streets, and so the men locking them up, and they stay on the streets anyway. So, but you gotta say to yourself, well, why the man lock them up then? Cause they on the streets. The men, who would have been ashamed to show any love for their wives, amused themselves by all sorts of love affairs with Htp, and they're going to explain Htp as prostitutes later on. But this degradation of the women was avenged on the men and degraded them also, till they fell into the abominable practice of pedastry. So you're going to see this footnote is actually saying that the dude's talking about homosexuality. And he says, and degraded alike their gods and themselves with the myth of Ganymede. But he's like, you're going to see he's talking about homosexuality, but you see they changed it. So they say, original translation corrected. See Engels and homosexuality. So basically, Engels was basically saying, oh yeah, these dudes was on that faggotry. Or, that's what he was saying. Engels was saying that. And the Marxists of today were like, let's change it. He really meant they were having sex with kids. No, they were having sex with men too. Okay? Okay, this is kind of long. I'm gonna hold you. Maybe I should do like 2 parts, because what the fuck? How far did okay, I skipped it. I'm like, how far did I go? Where am I? Okay. And degraded alike their guides and themselves with the myth of Ganymede. So this is the origin of monogamy as far as we can trace it back among the most civilized and highly developed people of antiquity. You see what I'm saying? Who's the most civilized and highly developed people of antiquity? The origin of monogamy. And so you have ancient Egypt. And you know what? Maybe I should just do half of this right now. Because basically there's a split right here. Although I really should do both because I need to write my book. But what I'm saying is this. You see, the ancient Egyptians had their monogamy. I'll show you guys. I know. I shouldn't. Let me see if I can find it. So basically, see, my thing is I don't want to click around on too many websites. So this is African Blood Siblings website. You guys know that website. So you're gonna see dope. So I think I wrote an article on masculine and femininity, African femininity and masculinity, because this is actually a really interesting question that we have to come to terms with. And so at one point in this article, I quote Cheikh Anta Diop. And so Cheikh Anta Diop is telling you, hey, look, This is Job's research. He says, look, socially admitted divisions of labor, so on and so forth, and he's going to talk about monogamy somewhere here, right? And look, so he's like, in ancient Egypt, remained of Black Africa, except for some slight Arab influence, the isolation of women under the supervision of your eunuchs, a practice so typically Eurasian, is absolutely unknown. Okay? He's like, instead, you had these couples that were, like, it was always couples, it was always monogamy. Let me see where I can find it. I want to see if I can find the word monogamy here without doing the search. Shit, this is really hard to find. Let's see, monogamy. Oh, okay, it's not here. That's why. I think I probably put the wrong article. I think I had a. Yeah, so is polygamy really African? So I had two different articles. So yeah, he's like right here. He says monogamy was the rule at the level of the masses of people, particularly in Africa. And you see, it's the same quote from the last one. I just this was just a different article. This was an article on masculinity and femininity, and this was an article on polygamy. So he's like, yeah, you know, you have this the eunuch, the supervision of the eunuch. You have that in ancient Greece. You have that throughout the Arab world, but you don't have that in Africa. What you have in Africa was monogamy at the rule of the masses, and you know, polygamy only at the ruling class. And I gave you guys the reasons. You know, if you wanted heirs, you know, so on and so forth, right? It's only with the now, some people say that the Arabs brought in polygamy. Some people also say the enslavement of Africans brought in polygamy because now you had women outnumbering men, right? And you know about polygamy, there's proper to connect that, so on and so forth, matriarchal, yada yada. But basically, you had this division of labor in the African family, and it was pretty balanced. Women did light work, men did heavy work. That was it. So when you talk about sewing and blah, 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 that was light work. You understand? When you talk about cleaning the house, that's light work. When you talk about clearing the fields, right? That's, you know, like right here in the fields, the woman, the husband who digs the land and the woman who sows. Sowing is light work. Digging is heavy work. At the time of harvest is the husband who uproots the peanuts, whereas the women will gather them. You know, gathering peanuts is easy. Pulling peanuts out of the ground, that's difficult. So that was the division. That was the balance of labor that we used to have in our time. So that's just the African context. You know, this is the African context. This is what Job says. But it's interesting that Job is also saying the same stuff. But no, sorry. But what you see here is this Wazungu, and for whatever, and it's worth it. It's good. If you're European, you're supposed to be Eurocentric. You know. But the trouble is when you read it as an African and you say, "Oh, the origin of monogamy," you know, and the most civilized and highly developed people of antiquity were the Greeks. When obviously, one, the Greeks probably got it from ancient Egyptians, and two, and see right here, he says, look, intimate, the likes of which cannot be found in the Eurasian world of period, Greece, Rome, and Asia. This fact proves that the ancient Egypt was not Semitic. In the Semitic tradition, the history of the world begins with the fall of man, his ruin being caused by the woman, the myth of Adam and Eve. In ancient Egypt, this myth does not exist, you know. But that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you guys. All right, so it was not in any way the fruit of individual sex love, with which it had nothing whatever to do. Marriages remained as before, marriages of convenience. It was the first form of the family to be based not on natural but on economic conditions, on the victory of private property over primitive, natural, communal property. The Greeks themselves put the matter quite frankly. The sole exclusive aims of monogamous marriage were to make the man supreme in the family and to propagate, as the future heirs to his wealth, children indisputably his own. Otherwise, marriage was a burden, a duty which had to be performed, whether one liked it or not, to God, state, and one's ancestor. In Athens, the law exacted from the man not only marriage, but also the performance of minimum of so-called conjugal duties. So I do want to, like I said, I am writing a book, so I do want to, so this is actually not a quote from him, but I do want to, you know, put inside the book at least one passage from Engels to show what these communists really think about, because I'm writing, I told you guys, I'm writing something about communists, right? So I do want to put at least one passage from the communists, just to show how they think. But all right, let's keep going. Thus, when monogamous marriage first makes its appearance in history, it is not at the reconciliation of man and woman, still less is the higher form of such reconciliation. Quite the contrary, monogamous marriage comes on the scene at the subjugation of one of the sexes by the other. It announces a struggle between the sexes unknown throughout the whole previous prehistoric period. So you see that. He's like, monogamous marriages are, in fact, the subjugation of one sex by the other. This is what they think about it. Now, again, I showed you guys we had monogamous relationships in Africa. And look at this, too. I want you guys to realize this. In contrast, so look, it says, most often she prepares the food and brings it to the fields while her husband works. The European travelers who crossed Africa like meteors often brought back piteous, striking descriptions of the fate of the poor women who were made to work by their husbands, while the latter rested in the shade. In contrast, the Europeans who have visited Africa and stayed there for a greater or lesser period of time are not sorry for the African women. They find them very happy. Okay? Basically, the women, the way how Africans organize their lives, their monogamous relationships, the women were very happy. Okay? And maybe I should actually include this quote in my book, just to stress that the communists don't get it right. But you see, a lot of these Europeans who came in, actually maybe not Marxists per se, but a lot of them who came in, they were, oh my gosh, these women, they're made to work. And I mean, it reminds you of that Native American joke. I don't know if you guys know about the Native American joke, but there's a joke that the Native Americans tell, and I think I'll try to look it up real quickly just for you guys. Only white man. So let's see if I can find the image real quick. Oh yeah, here's the image. Let me see how I can. I'm trying to copy image link to this window. Basically, I have two different windows just in case, something bad pops up. So he says, look, okay, this resolution is not good. Yeah, you guys can't read that. Let me see if I can find a better copy. Yeah, this is like 100 something pixels. Let's see if this one is better. Hold on a second. Let's see. It's not much better. This is actually not the same size, actually. Let me see if I can find something. No, those are... So these all kind of fit on your phone or something. Alright, so I'll just have to look up like the joke. Okay, this is a little bit better. Let me see if this is this is a little bit clearer, the resolution. So we're gonna see if this one works. I can't zoom in. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So he says, look, where the white man went wrong. So Indian Chief Two Eagles was asked by a white U.S. government official, you observed the white man for 90 years. You've seen his wars and his technological advances. You've seen his progress and the damage he's done. The chief nodded in agreement. The official continued, considering all these events, in your opinion, where did the white man go wrong? The chief stared at the government official, then replied, when white men find land, Indians running it. No taxes, no debt. Plenty buffalo, plenty beaver, clean water. Women did all the work. Medicine man free. Indian man spent all day hunting and fishing, all night having sex. Then the chief leaned back and smiled. Only white man dumb enough to think he could improve system like that. And that's the thing that you got to realize. When we're talking about the division of labor, right? And I'm not saying that the white man had a good system in his division. But Africans had division of labor. Indians had division of labor, right? And now, granted, this is a joke, so you don't know, to what extent women were enjoying it, men were not enjoying it. But in the case of Africa, we know that the women were enjoying it, right? In the case of the Native Americans, I can't really say because I'm not Native American, but what you see is, hey, you know what? They do have a system. They have their own system in place. You're trying to overthrow their system because of what? Like the Indian would say, why are you trying to overthrow our system? And this reminds me of, like I said, one of the most interesting documentaries that I've seen was this documentary on the maroon, strange foods or something like that, and it dealt with the Maroons of Suriname, right? And yeah, they had a system where the men went hunting all day, and obviously, they had children, and the women were in the village, cleaning and cooking. And it's like everybody lived happily. Everybody lived happily. And that's the thing that we have to come to terms with, that, people can live happily despite what you would consider quote unquote oppression. What you consider, the women are not, out hunting. Okay. The women are not hunting. Who cares? Well, the women aren't spending any time fishing. Who gives a shit? Or the men ain't cooking and cleaning. Okay. So Odie's not cooking and cleaning. Big fucking deal. There are plenty of ways. I'll tell you, man, when I was living with this woman, she loved bringing me food. But it is what it is. We don't understand. We just want Wazungu to you get what I'm saying. I shouldn't say we, but you get what I'm saying. All right, so we're going back to the literature. Monogamous marriage, blah, blah, blah. Maria announces the struggle between the sexes. Yeah, so in an old unpublished manuscript written by Marx and myself in 1846, reference here is the German ideology, published after Engel's death, I find the first division of labor is that between man and woman for the propagation of children. You see that? The first division of labor is that between man and woman for the propagation of children. And today I can add the first class opposition that appears in history coincides with the development of the antagonism between man and woman in monogamous marriage, and the first class oppression coincides with that of the female sex by the male. You see, and what's interesting is that there's this guy, Kaba Hiawatha, who I remember he was talking, he was like, the most oppressed person is really the woman, is really the white woman. Kaba Hiawatha. The guy, the guy, yeah, you guys know what I'm saying. But I was, him, he's like, yeah, the first, and a lot of black people are going to think this too, because this is what the Marxists is trying to get you to think. You see the feminism here, right? Monogamous marriage was the great historical step forward. Nevertheless, together with slavery and private wealth, it opens the period that has lasted until today, in which every step forward is also relatively a step backward, in which prosperity and development for some is won through the misery and frustration of others. It is a cellular form of civilized society in which the nature of the oppositions and contradictions fully active in that society can be already studied. You see what happens though? He's saying the first class opposition that appears, remember this is a Marxist. This is not Oni. Class opposition, which means nothing to Oni. This is a Marxist. You know what class opposition means to a Marxist? That means that the proletariat replace and kill the bourgeoisie. That's what class opposition is. Class conflict results in revolution. And so his example of revolution might not be women killing men, but don't be surprised if some women are killing men over this shit. And it's not even, and again, it doesn't apply to real life, because the Indians had a good system. The Africans had a good system. You see? The women were generally happy. They found them happy. If you were to really observe them and spend some time and to get to know them, you'd say, oh, wait a second, they're actually pretty happy. Whereas they might say, oh, look at the class conflict. Oh, the man is sitting down while the woman is gathering the, yeah, because he pulled the peanuts up. What do you want to do? You want the woman to pull the peanuts up on the floor too? You want her to dig holes too? You want the woman to pull peanuts up and the man gather the peanuts? What do you want? Let me not get hyped. So anyway, so the old comparative freedom of sexual intercourse by no means disappeared with the victory of pairing marriage or even of monogamous marriage. And so I think this is where they're going to talk about Hatarism and finally define it. Oh no, here it is right here. The old conjugal system, now reduced to narrow limits by the gradual disappearance of the punilin groups, which is the group marriage or whatever, still environed the advancing family, which it was not, which it was to follow the verge of civilization. It finally disappeared at the new form of Hatarism, which still follows mankind and civilization as a dark shadow upon the family. So by Hatarism, Morgan understands the practice coexistent with the monogamous marriage of sexual intercourse between man and unmarried women outside marriage, which, as we know, flourishes in the most varied forms throughout the whole period of civilization, and develops more and more into open prostitution. And this is actually, like I said, some women don't even care. Some women are like, hey man, I think sex, I don't want you falling in love with another woman. But if you're just having sex, I don't give a shit. And men are like, yeah man, don't worry, I didn't fall in love with her. You know what I'm saying? This haterism, like women, for instance, women, I was telling his brother, I said, women don't even want you eat another woman's food. They don't want you to eat another one's food. Whereas we men, go eat that guy's food. I don't give a shit. Oh man, yo, you gotta try his burger. You know what I'm saying? You gotta try this bacon he made. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck if you eat from some other dude. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, yo, I'll tell you, man, yo, Bakari put together some ribs, man. Go try some of Bakari's ribs. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Whereas a woman's not gonna be like, go try some of Matron's sweet potato pie. She ain't gonna tell you that. She gonna say, no, I don't like Matron's sweet potato pie, man. Ain't man. She put too much. You know what I'm saying? She must have butter pie. You know what I'm saying? That's what women's gonna do. Or they gonna, no, don't touch any the jollof made by Lero. You know what I'm saying? They'll be like, man, Lero's jollof ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, but that's what women's gonna do. Anyway, by the way, Yoda B gave a comment, so I was about to say, but all right, check this out. So more and more into open prostitution. This haterism derives quite directly from the group marriage, from the ceremonial surrender by which women purchase the right of chastity. Surrender. So now he's going to talk about how it comes from like ancient India. Prostitution comes from ancient India. He's crazy. Surrender for money was at first a religious act. It took place in the temple of the goddess of love, and the money originally went into the temple treasury. The temple slaves of Onitaset in Armenia. Armenia is from where that Kardashian lady's from, right? Kardashian family's from. And of Aphrodite in Corinth, like the sacred dancing girls attached to the temples of India. The so-called baiaderes. The word is a corruption of the Portuguese word bailadeira, meaning female dancer, were the first prostitutes. Originally the duty of every woman, the surrender was later performed by these priestesses alone, representative of all other women. So he's like, man used to go to the church to get a little bit of prayer. You know what I'm saying? Hey, among other peoples, do a little praying, right? Hey, among other peoples, haterism derives from the sexual freedom allowed to girls before marriage. Again, therefore, a relic of group marriage, but handed down in a different way with the rise of inequality of property. Already at the upper stage of barbarism, therefore, wage labor appears sporadically side by side with slave labor, and at the same time as its necessary correlates the professional prostitution of free women side by side with the forced surrender of the slave. Thus, the heritage which group marriage has bequeathed to civilization is double-edged. Just everything civilization brings forth is double-edged, double-tongued, divided against itself, contradictory. You see? Look what he's saying. Everything civilization brings forth is double-edged, double-tongued, divided against itself, and contradictory. You hear this, though? What would get a man in a quote-unquote European... And by the way, you guys got to remember who Marx and Engels were. Marx is petty bourgeoisie. Engels is bourgeoisie. And they're supposed to be writing the most revolutionary literature on the planet. And the revolutionary literature on the planet involves, let's get rid of the monogamous family because it doesn't work and it's exploitative and it's blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, again, Africa has the monogamous relationship. And India has the monogamous relationship. Native Americans have the monogamous relationship. The exploitative people were the Wazungu, if anything. But also, you got to ask yourself, what are they even talking about? You know what I'm saying? What are they even talking about? Like, are they exploitative, or is it that they told us they're exploitative and they are the leading scholars on the matter? You understand what I'm saying? That's what I want y'all to realize. Is it that this is exploitative? Is it that any of this is true? Or is this just what they're telling us so that we could believe them, so that they could destroy, so that they could take over Europe? They could justify the attempt to take over Europe. That's the question. Are we falling for their trick? That's the big question. So here, monogamy, there, heterism, with its most extreme form of prostitution. For heterism is as much a social institution as any other. It continues the old sexual freedom to the advantage of the men. And you see, this is the man. This is a man trying to tell you, hey man, it's only men. Men are the ones that are getting an advantage, so we got to destroy the system. And he's a man. Actually, not merely tolerated, but gaily practiced by the ruling classes. Particularly, it is condemned in words. But in reality, this condemnation never falls on the men concerned, but only on the women. They are despised and outcast in order that the conditional supremacy of men over the female sex may be once more proclaimed as the fundamental law of society. So, but again, and it's not necessarily inaccurate that in fact, you would hear this from women today that if a man cheats, it's not bad, but if a woman cheats, she's so blah blah blah. This is the double standard. Like you'd hear that from today, and again, that's why it makes it interesting because this is from 1884. Damn, I'm cold, boys. How y'all stay in America? But a second contradiction that develops within monogamous marriage itself. At the side of the husband who embellishes existence with heterism stands a neglected wife. And one cannot have one side of this contradiction without the other, any more than a man has a whole apple in his hand after eating half. But that seems to have been the husband's notion, until their wives taught them better. With monogamous marriage, two constant social types, unknown hitherto, make their appearance on the scene. The wife's attendant lover and the cuckold husband. And so a lot of us think, oh, cuckolds, that's when, a black man's messing with a white man's wife, right? Cuckolds go back to 1884. You understand? And what Engels is saying is that this is systematic, this is systemic, this is something that's normal in the Wazungu marriage. Now again, check out the joke doesn't tell you nothing about that in his thing. Now Engels actually does try to talk about the Indian marriage, and he says that the Indian marriage might have been more open. A lot of families might have been more open among certain Indian groups. We don't know, but what I'm saying is that you didn't have that in Africa, but it is what it is. So he says the husband had won the victory over the wives, but the vanquished magnanimously provided the crown, right? So he's like, oh, big up the women. Together with monogamous marriage and heterism, adultery became an unavoidable social institution. Adultery became an unavoidable social institution, denounced, severely penalized, but impossible to suppress. At best, the certain paternity of the children rested on moral convictions as before, and to solve the insoluble contradiction, the Code Napoleon, Article 312, decreed l'enfant concourt pendant le mariage, I can't say, pour pere la mari, the father of a child conceived during marriage is the husband. So basically, if your wife has a child, it's your child. Such is the final result of 3,000 years of monogamous marriage. Basically, you can't be like, oh, who's your kid? It's your kid because you married her, right? Don't go to the hotel for a wife. Anyway, so thus wherever the monogamous family remains true to its historical origin and clearly reveals the antagonism between the man and the woman expressed in the man's exclusive supremacy, it exhibits in miniature the same oppositions and contradictions as those in which society has been moving, without power to resolve or overcome them, ever since it split into classes at the beginning of civilization. I'm speaking here, of course, only of those cases of monogamous marriage where matrimonial life actually proceeds according to the original character of the whole institution, but where the wife rebels against the husband's supremacy. Not all marriages turn out thus, as nobody knows better than the German Philistine, who can no more assert his rule in the home than he can in the state, and whose wife, with every right, wears the trousers he is unworthy of. But to make look at this motherfucker, yo. And to make up for it, he considers himself far above his French companion in misfortune, to whom oftener than to him something much worse happens. So anyway, however, monogamous marriage, and I don't really care for this, but you see, he's talking about Europe. He's not talking about Africa. There's no mention of Africa here. He's going to go into the American Indians, but he's not going to talk about Africa, right? And he shouldn't. So, however, a monogamous marriage did not by any means appear. And I'm not just gonna read half of this shit. I'm not gonna. What the fuck? Did I pass the halfway point already? Oh no, this is the halfway point. I guess it's not really a halfway point. It's only. Shit. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna end over here, cause it's kind of long, low key. Well, maybe I don't know. We'll see. Part of it is that I do actually. I should actually have some more watch hours, so you guys could leave it on, and let it play. But anyway, however, monogamous marriage did not by any means appear always and everywhere in the classically harsh form it took among the Greeks. Among the Romans, who as future world conquerors had a larger, if a less fine vision than the Greeks, women were freer and more respected. A Roman considered that his power of life and death over his wife sufficiently guaranteed her conjugal fidelity. Here, moreover, the wife equally with the husband could dissolve the marriage at will. But the greatest progress and that's divorce. But the greatest progress in the development of individual marriage certainly came with the entry of the Germans into history. And see that the Germans are going to be the ones who give you individual sex love. For the reason that the German, on account of their poverty, very probably, were still at a stage where monogamy seems not yet to have been perfectly distinct from pairing marriage. We infer this from these. And look, the greatest progress and development of individual marriage is related to pairing marriage. Pairing marriage is when you share wives and you share husbands, right? That's what the communists are trying to get you to do. I just want you guys to peep that. So when you listen to this, realize what the Marxist is pushing. He wants you to share your wife and your husband. So if you like your wife, right? You like your wife or you like your husband, the communist is trying to come along and mess with your wife and husband. And I mean, this is why when I was younger, I knew about Stalin and Trotsky. And the thing that people would say about Trotsky was that the movement that Trotsky was pushing, the Trotskyists, were really about hooking up with each other. Really about free love. Whereas the Stalinists was about taking over the state and doing some real shit. So even if you're talking about communists, you got to distinguish between the Stalinists and the Trotskyists, as well as the Leninists and the Marxists and the Engelists or whatever, right? Because what Marx and Engels, they were pushing this free love thing, and Trotsky continued that shit. But that's the most stupid part of the socialist paradigm. But this is the pure Marxism. Oh yeah, you really got to be close to pairing marriages. You really got to be close to sex love. And not building families for the balance of your household. You see what I'm saying? We infer this from the three facts mentioned by Tacitus. First, through marriage, though marriage was distinct from pairing marriage. No, though marriage was held in great reverence, they content themselves with one wife. The woman lived hedged round with chastity. Polygamy was the rule for the distinguished members and the leaders of the tribe. A condition of things similar to that among the Americans, where pairing marriage was the rule. So I think when he says Americans, he means the American Indians, right? Secondly, the transition from he could mean the European, but because literally he says American Indians, so I don't know. Where pairing marriage was the rule. Secondly, and it's not that I don't know, it's that, or not that we don't know, it's that it's probably mentioned it earlier in the pairing marriage section, but I skipped ahead to monogamy because I got a book to write. I can't be reading this bullshit, Secondly, the transition from mother right to father right could only have been made a short time previously. For the brother or the mother's side, the nearest Gentile male, and Gentile, notice what Gentile means, right? The nearest Gentile male relation, according to mother right, was still considered among almost closer of kin than the father, corresponding again to the standpoint of the American Indians, among whom Marx, as he often said, found the key to the understanding of our primitive age. So the American Indians, the American Indians were considered the key to our primitive age. Okay? And you got to understand the pseudoscience here, right? Basically, the Native Americans had nothing to do with Europe. They had no history in Europe. They left Africa, they went up to Asia, and they went east and ended up in America. And so there's a fork out of Africa. You go west and go into Europe, or east into Asia. They went east into Asia, and from there went east into America. But somehow Marx is saying, hey, our primitive age in Europe, and remember, who is he talking about? When he says our own primitive age, who is our? The human species? The Native American? Who's our? You gotta peep who these people are, and what their story is, and what time they're on. But we're going to keep going. And thirdly, women were greatly respected among the Germans and also influential in public affairs. Now, again, this is something in Africa, which is in direct contradiction to the supremacy of men in monogamy. In almost all these points, the Germans agree with the Spartans, among whom also, as we saw, pairing marriage had not yet been completely overcome. Thus, here again, an entirely new influence came to power in the world with the Germans. The new monogamy, which now developed from the mingling of peoples amid the ruins of the Roman world, clothed the supremacy of the men in milder forms and gave women a position which, outwardly at any rate, was much more free and respected than it had ever been in classical antiquity. Only now were the conditions realized in which, through monogamy within it, parallel to it, or in opposition to it, as the case might be, the greatest moral advance we owe to it could be achieved. Modern individual sex love, which had hitherto been unknown to the entire world. So he's like, before this, individual sex love was not known in the entire world. Now, granted, we go back to ancient Egypt, and you have, he says, moreover, this has been unchanged since the ancient times. The couples have been seen on African monuments of Egypt as are united by tenderness of friendship and an intimate common love, the likes of which could not be found in the European world of this period, whether Greece, Rome, or Asia. So he said, look, in Africa, the women were united with their men in tenderness, friendship, and intimacy in their common life. But Engels is going to tell you, oh no, the only time there was, hitherto unknown to the entire world, the Germans introduced modern individual sex love. Okay. This advance, however, undoubtedly sprang from the fact that the Germans still lived in pairing families and grafted the corresponding position of women onto the monogamous system, so far as that was possible. Most decidedly did not spring from the legendary virtue and wonderful moral purity of the German character, which was nothing more than a freedom of the pairing family from the crying moral contradictions of monogamy. On the contrary, in the course of the migrations, the Germans had morally much deteriorated, particularly during the southeasterly wanderings among the nomads of the Black Sea steppes, from whom they acquired not only equestrian skills, but also gross unnatural vices, as Ammonius expressly states of the Taphians, of the Procrupius, of the Heroines. Yeah, that was a mouthful. I don't know what the fuck he just said. I'm going to try to only comment after finishing a paragraph, though. I'll try to do that just because this is getting kind of long. Again, I do need the watch hours, but I'm also getting hungry. When you got to start cooking for yourself for the first time in 3 months, it's kind of like, shit, you know, like, you ain't eating enough. I tell you, this one used to bring me these big plates of food, and I'd be like, why you give me these big-ass plates of food? It's too much damn food. And now I'm sitting here like, shit, I ain't got no damn food. Right. So, but if monogamy was the only one of all the known forms of the family through which modern sex love could develop, that does not mean that within monogamy, modern sexual love developed exclusively or even chiefly as the love of husband and wife for each other. This is precluded by the very nature of strictly monogamous marriage under the rule of man. Among all historically active classes, that is, among all ruling classes, matrimony remained what it had been since the pairing marriage, a matter of convenience which was arranged by the parents. The first historical form of sexual love is passion, a passion recognized as natural to all human beings, at least if they belong to the ruling classes, and as the higher form of sexual impulse, and that is which constitutes the civilic character. This first form of individual sex love, the chivalrous love of the Middle Ages, was by no means conjugal. Quite the contrary. It is the classical form among the Provençals. It heads straight for adultery, and the poets of love celebrated adultery. The flowers of provincial love poetry are the albus, abude, songs of dawn. They're describing glowing colors, how the knight lies in bed beside his love, the wife of another man, while outside stands the watchman who calls to him as soon as the first gray of dawn, alba, appears, so that he can get away unobserved. The parting scene then forms the climax of the poem. The northern French and also the worthy Germans adopted this kind of poetry together with the corresponding fashion of chivalrous love. Old Wolfram of Eschenbach has left us 3 wonderfully beautiful songs of dawn on this same improper subject, which I like better than this 3 long than his 3 long heroic poems. So again, we don't care what you like, but here's the thing. Right? Which I liked it better. Like, shut the fuck up. I don't give a shit. But here's the thing. He's reading these poems and he's like, you see, adultery was a part of the system. They're fucking poems. You know? They're poems. He's like, sexual love was not between husband and wife, but only if you were cheating because look at this poem. Like no serious. And the thing is this: it's like the song. It's like if 100 years from now people looked back and said, you know, because of the song by Shaggy, it wasn't me. You know, a man can't really find joy from a woman. He'd only find joy from his neighbor. He can't find joy from his wife. He has to find joy from his neighbor. You know, because honey came in, shot me red-handed, and slept with the girl next door. You know, but that's not a historical document. Stupid. Just a nice song. Just a clever, you know, oh, it's funny and it's hilarious. It's a joke. It wasn't me. It's a joke. But you got to look at it like it's a, you know, like it's a study. But this is the same thing Nearly Fuller Jr. does. You know, I don't want to tell you guys who said it, but somebody was saying, look, Marxists are not like, to any intelligent person, Marxism is stupid. To any intelligent person, Marxism is stupid. And so this reminds me of something that Nearly Fuller Jr. says. Nearly Fuller Jr. is like, look, I don't read books. I watch movies. I watch movies and I watch television. Then I come up with my ideas. Right? So I watch the dramas and then I come up with my ideas. And the irony of this is this, right? Because some people will also tell you that a lot of literature is being propagated to the point of destroying the social fabric of the community. Right? On purpose. You know, and some of the literature is Marxist literature. But anyway, you don't want to listen. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. Let's keep going. We're just trying to read the paragraph and then pass it through. Let's go. Nowadays, there are 2 ways of concluding a bourgeois marriage. In Catholic countries, the parents, as before, procure a suitable wife for their young bourgeois son, and the consequence is, of course, the fullest development of the contradictions inherent in monogamy. The husband abandons himself to haterism, prostitutes, and the wife to adultery. So the wife is doing adultery, but the husband is whatever. Probably the only reason why the Catholic Church abolished divorce was because it had convinced itself that there is no more a cure for adultery than there is for death. In Protestant countries, on the other hand, the rule is that the son of a bourgeois family is allowed to choose a wife from his own class with more or less freedom. Hence, there may be a certain element of love in the marriage, as indeed, in accordance with Protestant hypocrisy, is always assumed for decency's sake. Hence, here the husband's haterism is a more sleepy kind of business, and adultery by the wife is less the rule. But since in every kind of marriage people remain what they were before, and since the bourgeois of Protestant countries are mostly Philistine, all that this Protestant monogamy achieves, taking the average of the best cases, is a conjugal partnership of lead-in boredom known as domestic bliss. You see what I'm saying? See, I kind of days I was thinking about this, this bullshit. But he says, Protestant countries, the rule is that the son of the bourgeois family is allowed to choose a wife from his own class with more or less freedom. Here, hence, there must be a certain element of love in the marriage, as indeed, in accordance with the Protestant hypocrisy, it's always assumed for decency's sake. Here, the husband's haterism is more sleepy kind of business. He doesn't really do it, right? And adultery by the wife is less the rule, right? So in the Catholics, adultery is a thing. In the Protestants, it's like, maybe not, right? But since in every kind of marriage, people remain what they were before, and since the bourgeois of Protestant countries are mostly Philistines, right? He just says it, whatever. All that this Protestant monogamy achieves, taking the average of the best cases, is a conjugal partnership of lead-in boredom, known as domestic bliss. So he's like, you guys marry each other and you're bored in your marriage. Shut the fuck up. Like, shut up. Like, again, his aim, remember, his aim is the destruction of the overthrow of all existing social conditions. And so he's going to tell you, oh, yeah, aren't you bored in your marriage because you don't have individual sex love? Because you're not really messing with all the men you can? What? The best mirror of these... And so, I got this woman in Africa. And I'm not saying it's not hard to be away from her, but when I'm with her, she's not bored. The best mirror of these two methods of marrying in the novel, the French. Look, is the novel, the French novel for the Catholic manner, the German for the Protestant. In both, the hero gets them. In the German, the young man gets the girl. In the French, the husband gets the horns. Which of them is worse off is sometimes questionable. This is why the French bourgeoisie is as much horrified by the dullness of the German novel as the German Philistine is by the immorality of the French. However, now that Berlin is the world capital, the German novel is beginning with a little less timidity to use as part of its regular stock and trade the haterism and adultery long familiar to that town. So what are we saying here? He's looking at novels. Same thing as Nelly Fuller Jr. Just some people will trick you by playing on your attachment to social media. Okay? To your attachment to popular media. They'll say, man, you know how Superman is saving people, and that's what we gotta do. You know? Or, Superman only saves white folk. Or Superman he can fly all over the world, but for some reason, he only active in Metropolis. The fuck are you talking about? He's not a real person. He's not a real person. But this is the thing. It's like, these novels are not real people. They're just stories. And he's like, oh, now they're adding, it's errated. In both cases, however, the marriage is conditioned by the class position of the parties, and to that extent, always a marriage of convenience. In both cases, these marriages of convenience turn often enough into crassest prostitution, sometimes of both partners, but far more commonly of the woman, who only differs from the ordinary courtesan in that she does not let out her body on piecework as a wage worker, but sells it once and for all into slavery. So, you see, they're saying that the woman, this is another quote that I should save, they're saying that the woman is basically a prostitute, but she does it all at once. And I'm telling you this, I've heard feminists say this. They say marriage is prostitution. The feminists say that marriage is prostitution. Now, I'm going to try to do a Google search, but I obviously, with the words like marriage is prostitution, it's not, that's bound to get me some old bullshit. Let me say, yeah, so right here, this is an article. So there's quite a few. So it's not the worst list of things. So I'll show you guys because there's no pornography here, which is good. So I'll show you guys what it looks like. Showing results of marriage and prostitution. So it says, "Our Reddit changed my view. Marriage is just legal monogamous prostitution." Right? Then here, this is a Guardian article. Marriage is a form of prostitution. Right? And here's a Quora. Is marriage a form of prostitution? These are real questions people are asking. But of course, the guy Engels did it already. The feminist author Sheila Jeffries has never shied away from controversy. Now with the industrial vagina, she's on the global sex trade. Bindle meets her and so on and so forth. And then I don't know. I don't know what this is about. But again, you guys get it. This is something that feminists say today. But he's not saying it today. He's saying it in 1884. And again, he's not even saying, oh, it's just prostitution. He's saying it's slavery. She sells it once and for all into slavery. Her body is into slavery. This is what they call marriage. And for all marriages of convenience, Fourier's words hold true. As in grammar, two negatives make an affirmative. So in matrimonial morality, two prostitutions pass for a virtue. Okay? So he's like, matrimonial morality. So this is Fourier. Again, this is another European. And this is from 1841. And he's saying, oh yeah, marriage is prostitution. Matrimonial means prostitution. You see? Oh, he's even saying morality is prostitution. So you got to understand the background, the backdrop of these these people. And I wonder Charles Fourier. So Charles Fourier is just talking this bullshit. We just got to figure out who is this person, right? So I'll try to look that up on my own time. Anyway, so sex love is the relationship with a woman. Sex love is the relationship with a woman becomes and can only become the real rule among the oppressed classes. You see, and this is what this is where he's going to start talking about. I don't want to say us because we're not necessarily oppressed classes per se, but this is where you can start to understand your situation in a European society where you are not part of the ruling class, right? So sex love is the relationship that the woman becomes and can only become the real rule among the oppressed classes, or particularly if you don't have money. I'll say it that way. Which means today among, and not that you don't have any money, but that you don't have money, right? So, which means today among the proletariat, whether this relation is often sanctioned or not. But here are the foundations of typical monogamy are cleared away. Here, there is no property for the preservation and inheritance of which monogamy and male supremacy were established. See that? Property is where the preservation and inheritance of which monogamy and male supremacy were established. Hence, there is no incentive to make this male supremacy effective. There's no incentive when there's no property to make male supremacy effective. And so they're trying to get away with private property. Okay? What is more, there are no means of making it so. Bourgeois law, which protects their supremacy, exists only for the possessing class, for the people with money, and their dealings with the proletariat. The law costs money, and on account of the worker's poverty, it has no validity for his relations to his wife. Right? Here, quite often, personal and social conditions aside. And now the larger scale industry has taken the wife out of the home, onto the labor market, and into the factory, and made her often the breadwinner of the family. No basis for any kind of male supremacy is left in the proletariat household, except perhaps for something of the brutality towards women that has spread since the introduction of monogamy. So what he's saying is this. The men, because the women are out of the home and in the labor market, and sometimes are also breadwinners, there's no basis for men to have supremacy over women except that he has domestic violence. Except that he has domestic violence. Basically, the only thing that would make a man supreme is that he's bigger and he can fight her. Now, granted, I don't think a man should fight a woman. I'll say it that way, right? But what I'm saying is that you see, like if you read between the lines here, you'll see the whole reasoning behind men and women fighting each other in black society. And I say that because one time there was this article, there was this comment. Somebody said, they said something along the lines of, a woman, like she was like, our mothers used to wake up and sweep the floor or sweep the field, or not sweep the field, but sweep the porch at 5 a.m. for her husband and cook a breakfast or something like that, right? Cook a breakfast, sweep the floor. And the woman said, that's because the fathers hated the mothers. And then I pointed out, no, the father buys a house for the mother. He gives her a house, he pays her bills, so what she says is, you know what, I'll sweep the floor and make him breakfast. Okay? And then a woman responded, but our mothers actually worked too. And that's where that whole thing falls apart. And this is why, this is another thing that you have to realize, that and of course that might not be a justification for why you don't want women to work, but it is a realization that if you as a man, if the woman, and actually check out the Job actually writes about how a lot of the men lost their role in society because of when the white man conquered, he kind of made it so that you no longer, like the men no longer right here, war, right? It says the socially admitted division of labor reserves to the man the task involving risk, power, force, and endurance. If, as a result of a changed situation due to the intervention of some outside factor, cessation of a state of war, for example, etc., the task of a man came to be whittled down, so much the worse for the woman, she would nonetheless continue to carry out the household duties and others reserved to her by society. For the man could not relieve her of this without losing prestige in the eyes of all, right? And that's what it is. If a man's cooking for his wife in Africa today, right? If this woman I was living with, if I told her mother, oh yeah, I'll cook for her, you know, she doesn't cook, she just makes me cook, right? Her mother would be like, what the fuck is wrong with her? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, you got this good man and you making him cook for you? The fuck is like, what kind of bullshit? But that's what it is. You know, but like, see, he's saying the cessation of state of war. So, men used to do things with risk, power, force, and endurance, but when the white man forced you into a state of peace, or a state of domination, you no longer was going about doing what you need to do. And that's where the problems of the black community comes in. And here you have the same with this labor market thing. The women did not participate in the labor market. Right? And for better or worse. But now when the women are participating in the labor market, right? You as a man, you can't be telling her no type of thing. The only way you could tell her is if you're being brutal towards her. But otherwise, she's like, and this is the thing that I noticed too, because I tell you, I was one time dating this woman here in America, and she'd be like, can you sometimes clean up too? Can you share in the cleaning? Because I'm going to work sometimes. Now, I was on vacation, right? But she's like, I'm going to work sometimes, so could you clean up sometimes? And my son was there too, so my son would make a mess, and she'd be like, can you clean up after your son? Type shit. But it's like, yeah. Because if she's working, and especially if I'm not working, right? Or she's paying the bills and I'm not paying her bills, right? I was just visiting, right? Yeah, she wants me to put in some work. You understand? And of course, if I'm not into cleaning and cooking, then there's a problem. You see what I'm saying? The problem, because now I'm looking at her like, well, you a woman, you should be cooking and cleaning, because I don't want to do it, right? But then you have your problems. But it all stems back to this almost this, not equality of work, of labor access, but the fact that women are working, that's gonna be your problem as a man moving forward. The proletarian family is therefore no longer monogamous in the strict sense, even when there is a passionate love and the firmest loyalty on both sides, and maybe all the blessings of religious and civil authority. Here, therefore, the eternal attendants of monogamy, haterism, and adultery play only an almost vanishing part. The wife has in fact regained the right to dissolve the marriage, and if two people cannot get on with one another, they prefer to separate. In short, proletarian marriage is monogamous in the etymological sense of the word, but not at all in its historical sense. So you see what happens. He's like, look, you're going to run into problems. Well, he doesn't look at the problems, but he's like, you're going to run into problems in the situation of a monogamous relationship between proletariat. Hold on a second. You guys can't hear me? It says you guys can hear me. Sorry. I just read a line ahead. Red Black Gentleman says, I that is pronounced heterism. This is the historic AE style vowel. It's silent. Oh, okay. Nah, but I like to call it haterism, because it sounds like saying he calling haters. But I feel you. Heterism. Now, see, my thing is this too. Because I don't pronounce African words perfectly, I sometimes don't want to pronounce Wazungu words perfectly. You know what I mean? Because they took away my ability to... No, I'm joking. I'm not going to blame them on me not pronouncing African words properly. Well, I mean, although, but yeah, no, I feel, heterism. I'll try to say that moving forward. So let's see. In short, proletarian marriage in the legal sense, but not in all historical sense. So our jurists, of course, find that progress as legislation is leaving women with no further ground of complaint. Modern civilized systems of law increasingly acknowledge first that for a marriage to be legal, it must be a contract freely entered into by both partners. And secondly, that also in a married state, both partners must stand on the common footing of equal rights and duties. If both these demands are consistently carried out, say the jurists, women have all they can ask. I feel like I was reading this and interrupting it while I was reading it, but I wasn't supposed to. All right, so this typically legalist method of argument is exactly the same. Oh yeah, but look at this. So basically, he's like this. This is important. Leaving women with no further ground of complaint. Find the progress of legislation is leaving women no progress in social. Modern civilized system of law increasingly acknowledge first that a marriage to be legal, it must be a contract freely entered into by both parties, and secondly, that also the married state, both partners must stand on the common ground of equal rights and duties. If both these duties are carried out, say the jurists, women have all they can ask. So he's like, look, women and men, like if I want to marry a woman, like for instance, this woman in Africa, she's like, oh, I want to marry you, Oni. I want to marry you, Oni. I'm like, yeah, I want to marry you too, right? That's not enough to these Marxists. They're saying that the woman only wants to marry me because I have money. You see what I'm saying? And I mean, obviously that's true, right? Although I shouldn't say that. No, I shouldn't say that. You get what I'm saying. But you know, obviously I don't have no money, right? But what I'm saying is this: she's like, they're like, because of the class inequality, because of the private property inequality, right? A woman is going to marry on the basis that she can now have access to my class, or to the wealth afforded me because I'm a man. Right? Now, granted, you know, that's not all there is to it. You know, obviously, you know, I got more access to wealth because I'm also quote unquote American, but you guys know what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is this though. They're questioning whether or not a woman can consent to a man because of the class inequality between men and women. Now, granted, this woman is hitting me up saying that she wants to marry me. At first, I wasn't even trying to marry nobody. You guys know that. You guys know, you know, I was on that, you know, hanging out with the hetters. You know what I'm saying? I'm joking. I wasn't hanging out with the hetters. You know what I'm saying? But like, I just wanted to use that word. That's gonna be a sound bite. But anyway, but you guys know how it was, right? She wanted to marry me, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, she cannot consent because of the class inequality, because private property exists. This is what these people are trying to get away with. And again, I want to remind you guys, we come from an African people where men and women were marrying from jump. And women were happy from jump. Women were very happy from jump. But this is what they're trying to get at us. You got to peep game when you peep game. So he's like, look, women can't consent. He's gonna explain it by the logic of the labor market now. Okay? And again, the labor market, you can consent in the labor market too, but the Marxists want you to believe that you can't. But we're going to keep going. This typically legalist method of argument is exactly the same as that which the radical Republican bourgeois use to put the proletariat in its place. The labor contract is to be freely entered into by both partners, but it is considered to have been freely entered into as soon as the law makes both parties equal on paper. The power conferred on the one party by the difference of the class position, the pressure thereby brought to bear on the other party, the real economic position of both, that is not the law's business. Again, for the duration of the labor contract, both parties are to have equal rights, insofar as one of the other does not expressly surrender them. That economic relations compels the worker to surrender even the last semblance of equal rights. Here again, there is no concern of the law. So he says that economic relations compel the worker to surrender even the last semblance. So he's like, the proletariat does not enter into business. Does not enter a labor contract equal with the bourgeoisie. He's saying, and he's comparing this to men and women, by the way. He's like, they don't enter into legally, equally because blah, blah, blah. But again, you got to pick up on what wage labor really is. That's somebody paying you to work because they have an ability to pay you. That's it. And eventually you get the ability to pay people if you save your money up. Now, not saying that everybody saved their money up or were laborers before they were able to, so on and so forth. Some people steal their money. That's fine. Or not fine, but that's just what it is. Right? But some people are able to pay you. Yeah. That's it. Some people, like you come into the world where people have wealth before you do. Like right now, I have more wealth than my son. Period. Now, the Marxist is going to tell you, oh, well, the only reason why your child is with you is because you have more wealth than him. But if he had more wealth, if he had equal wealth with you, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Kindly. But see, you gotta peep. What this is one of the leading intellectual traditions on the planet at this point. Why? It's ridiculous. Why is this one of the leading intellectual works on the planet? Real Black Gentleman says, LOL. You know what it is. RBG. All right. So, in regards to marriage, the law, even the most advanced, is fully satisfied as soon as the partners have formally recorded that they are entering into marriage of their own free consent. What goes on in real life behind the judicial scenes, how this free consent comes about, that is not the business of the law and the jurist, and yet the most elementary comparative jurisprudence should show that the jurist what this free consent really amounts to. In the countries where an obligatory share of the paternal inheritance is secured to the children by law, and they cannot therefore be disinherited, in Germany, in the countries with French law and everywhere, the children are obliged to obtain their parents' consent to their marriage. In the countries with English law, where parental consent to a marriage is not legally required, the parents of their side have full freedom in the testamentary disposal of their property and can disinherit their children at their pleasure. It is obvious that in spite and precisely because of this fact, freedom of marriage among the classes with something to inherit is in reality not a whit greater in England and America than it is in France and Germany. So what he's saying is this: when you're a child, when you cannot, well, all right. So basically, all right, listen. I get a house in Africa, or I get a house in America, whatever, right? In certain jurisdictions, I have to give my land to my children. Obligatory share. In some countries where obligatory share paternal inheritance, I have to give my wealth to my child, right? In those situations, I can tell my son who he can and can't marry. Okay? However, in situations where I can disinherit my kid doesn't need my consent in marriage. That's all it is. And that's okay. Because the thing is that sometimes they're trying to protect their inheritance from getting into the wrong hands. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, like RPG is talking about, you might not want your kid, like, but let's say my son falls for a heter. Okay? He falls for a heter. He falls for a hoe. He goes to the hotel and he finds a woman for the streets. I don't want her to get in my house that I work for. I put my money in. I don't want that shit. You know? So I'll be like, hey, no, son, if you want that, don't worry, you ain't getting my shit. She ain't touching my stuff. Well, on the other hand, I could be like, oh no, I'm giving you this thing. Okay, well, no, you ain't gonna marry this woman. And this reminds me of, like, basically, I got this brother who married a Wazungu. I stopped messing with this brother. Real talk. See, I'm not like y'all, where y'all like, oh, my brother married a white woman, but I'm still friends. Nah, not me. Not me. I was like, forget it. He wrote me the other day. You're not my brother. Well, he didn't write me the other day. It was like years ago. Last time he wrote me was like years ago. You know what I'm saying? But my point is this. My mother left property for like some inheritance for all of her kids, right? And he has to get a piece. And his wife was the one who was like, yo, let me get a piece right now. You understand? So her body wasn't even cold. And she was like, let me get some of that land she had. I'm telling you the truth. But this is why. So why I'm saying this is that because you actually do want to say in who your children marry, or you do want to say in whether or not your children, because your children, believe it or not my child, but a lot of children out there are gonna be going for the wrong partner, if you know what I'm saying, and you might want to have a say over whether the wrong partner gets something from you. I'll put it that way. But see, not my kid, please. Shit. I tell you, sometimes, y'all know about those dating apps like Tinder and shit? I remember when he was younger, I would open up Tinder for him, and I'd tell him to swipe left, swipe right. Swipe right, say yes to the black women. Swipe left on the white girls. Just to teach him. And I'd be like, hey, is this girl cute or ugly? And I'd be like, no, she's ugly. If he says like, white girl's cute, I say, no, she's ugly. Because see, she's white. You see what I'm saying? You got to teach them young. Now, some of y'all are like, oh, no, that's a little extreme. I ain't want them to. Yeah, okay. But that's why your grandkids gonna be looking like Tom, Dick, and Harry. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell me I'm extreme. Your grandkids looking like Tom, Dick, and Harry. Don't come to me. Grandkids looking like George Dan Washington. You talking to me, please? Shit. All right. As regards the legal equality of husband and wife in marriage, but you see, he's like, the court is not really. But you understand what he's saying. The court is not even worried about what happens to the marriage afterward. The court's not worried about how. So what are you proposing? That the court is worried about what happens to the marriage, like what happens in your marriage afterward? The court is worried about what happens in your marriage before you get married, or why the two of you consented in the beginning. What are you trying to do? This is why some people don't like the Marxists. But we don't peep game, and that's the problem. You know, we don't peep game, and that's the problem. So, as regards the legal equality of husband and wife in marriage, the position is no better. The legal inequality, the legal. I don't know, my ringer was off, and somebody was. Oh yeah, ringer's off because of this. I forgot. I'm like, why is the ringer off? The legal. Let me just turn my ringer off again because I just turned it on for some reason. The legal inequality of the two partners bequeathed to us from earlier social conditions is not the cause, but the effect of the economic oppression of the woman. You see, the legal inequality of the two partners bequeathed to us from earlier social conditions is not the cause, but the effect of the economic oppression of the woman. So basically, women are oppressed in the old communistic household, which comprised many couples and their children. This is what they're trying to push on you. Many couples and their children. The task entrusted to the women of managing the household was as much a public and socially necessary industry as the procuring of the food by the men. Now, granted, I want you to know that this was seen in the Maroon Village too. So this, like women working together outside, is not a bad thing. I just want to say that before we go forward. But we just got to pay attention to how Wazungu doesn't understand what he's looking at, and he makes it into some fuck shit. Okay? He makes it into some fuck shit. But with the patriarchal family, and still more with the single monogamous family, a change came. Household management lost its public character. It no longer concerned society. It became a private service. The wife became the head service, excluded from all participation in social production. Not until the coming of the modern large-scale industry was the road to social production open to her again, and then only to the proletarian wife. But it was open in such a manner that if she carries out her duties in the private service of her family, she remains excluded from public production and unable to earn. But look, this is the woman problem. I don't want to say the woman problem, but the working woman problem, where it's like she can't have a family and she can't work. She can't have a family and work at the same time. You see? And he's gonna talk about it in 1884. You see what I'm saying? It's not a 90s problem. It's not, because people are still making literature on this. And people are still suffering from this. Women are still suffering. Should I start a family, or should I go to college and get a job, and so on and so forth? And then they're like, shit, I went to college, got a job, and I don't have a family. Or they're like, shit, I have a family and I don't have a job. Right? But this is the paradox he's talking about. He says, but it was open in such a manner that if she carries out her duties in the private service of her family, she remains excluded from public production and unable to earn. And if she wants to take part in public production and earn independently, she cannot carry out family duties. And the wife's position in the factory is the position of women in all branches of business, right up to medicine and the law. The modern individual family is founded on the open or concealed domestic slavery of the wife, and modern society is a mass composed of those individual families as molecules. Okay? So he's saying this, and I think I'm going to put this inside of the book. I don't know which quote I'm going to put. There's a lot of quotes I put, but I think I'm going to put in the book, where he's like, look, that's what it is. So I think I'm going to just finish this whole page because whatever. And thanks, family, for coming through. Thanks for supporting the channel. Like I said, I do need more watch hours. I kind of want to, because like some of y'all might be like, hey, Oni, I want to, how come I can't put the super chat? You can't, because I don't have enough people watching. You know what I'm saying? So, if anything, you just leave this shit on, and then, watch it twice, whatever. Get the watches up, get the views up, get the view hours up, and then we can do some super chats, and then I could tell my wife, oh, look at that. I got, I did a podcast and I got a super chat. You know what I'm saying? Right now she's just like, why are you doing that podcast? Talk to me. But it is what it is. So in the great majority of cases today, at least in the possessing classes, the husband is obliged to earn a living and support his family, and that is in itself gives him a position of supremacy without any need for special legal titles and privileges. Now again, who said it's supreme though? Again, you, like this is the thing that we gotta pick up on. Okay, the man is in social production, and the woman isn't. So what? She gets everything paid for, and all she needs to do is work that doesn't require, go back to the ancient African, risk power, force, or endurance. She does these things that do not require anything heavy on her. And then she gets to eat the best foods. She gets to wear the best clothes. She gets to live her best life with a man who loves her, who gives her the good D. The D with risk, power, force, and endurance. You feel what I'm saying? You guys know what I'm saying? She gets to do that. And then the white man says, that's the problem. Just like with the Native Americans. He goes to the Native Americans, and Native Americans are like, look, the woman, she does her domestic work, and she gets free fish, she gets free food, she gets free meat, she gets free medicine, she gets the buffalo, she doesn't have to pay taxes, she gets clean water, she gets all that kind of stuff. But because she doesn't go hunting, throw the whole system away. And the thing is this, are women as good at hunting as men? Probably not. You know, a lot of what hunting involves, I don't know if you guys been hunting, I haven't been hunting. And of course, when we talk about hunting, we're not talking about hunting from, today's standard where you could just go outside with a rifle. We're talking about you carrying a bow and arrow and you stalking animals for hours. Okay? You going out into the forest stalking animals for hours with a bow and arrow. So you got to be pretty accurate with the bow and arrow, and you got to be outside, living in the dirt, sleeping outside on the tents and shit. Because there's no homes out in the forest. You got to sleep in tents and eat berries while you're passing by, all that kind of stuff, just so you can get meat on the table. And the woman don't got to do that. And all of a sudden, because she's not going outside doing that, right? She's enslaved. She's living in slavery. You got to peep what these people are saying, right? So the husband is obliged to earn a living and support his family. So he's supporting his family, but so basically he's now in a position of supremacy, without any need for special legal. And it's like, that's not supreme. Am I supreme? Do I have a position of supremacy over my son? No. The guy gets free food, free clothes, don't gotta pay for nothing. He gets free education. He gets all my wisdom, all my books, everything that I got for free. And so I'm the supreme position. That's the logic. And look, I'm not saying it's not the logic. Okay, if you feel like it's the logic, make the case of it, please. But what I'm saying is that you got to look at it from two sides and say that maybe there's a mutual benefit at play. That's what I'm saying. There's a mutual benefit at play. That not having to pay for your own food is a good damn thing. When I was in Africa, like I said, I'm building a house. All the money going into this house is coming from my money. Not this woman's money. And she's getting this house. She said, basically, we went to her family house. Her mother lives in a big house. I wasn't planning on building a bigger house. But I ended up building a bigger house just for her. I'm not even in Africa. And you're going to tell me she's oppressed? And I'm holding a position of supremacy? And granted, yes, I do want her to listen to me when I talk to her. Because like I said, I am paying for this whole damn house. Yeah, for sure. But, and of course, she also says, the man's the leader and all that shit. But I mean, of course. Because at the end of the day, you know who's going to put their life on the line for who? I'm not saying she wouldn't put her life on for me, but she shouldn't. So yeah, if I'm putting my life on the line for you, absolutely I want you to listen to me when I tell you, hey, look, cross the street because this person's shady. There's these young brothers walking by, and for some reason she said, I hope you can fight in front of them. But like, yeah, I gotta fight 3 dudes if 3 dudes come after us. It's gonna be a 3-on-1. It's not gonna be a 3-on-2. Within the family, he is the bourgeois, and the wife represents the proletariat. You see what he says? Within the family, he is the bourgeois, and the wife represents the proletariat. That's another quote that I should keep, because it's just like so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Because this is the people talking about a proletarian revolution. In the industrial world, the specific character of the economic oppression burdening the proletariat is visible in all its sharpness only when all special legal privileges of the capitalist caste have been abolished. See, look, pay attention. In the industrial world, the specific character of the economic oppression burdening the proletariat is visible in all its sharpness only when all special legal privileges of the capitalist class have been abolished and complete legal equality of both classes established. The democratic republic does not do away with the opposition of the two classes. On the contrary, it provides the clear field on which the fight can be fought out. And in the same way, the peculiar character, the supremacy of the husband over the wife in the modern family, the necessity of creating real social equality between them, and the way to do it will only be seen in the clear light of day when both possess legally complete equality of rights. Then it will be plain that the first condition for all the liberation of the wife is to bring the whole female sex back into public industry, and that this in turn demands the abolition of the monogamous family as the economic unit of society. I did not read this paragraph too well. I was kind of stuttering and stumbling because I was like, sometimes you're just thinking. But you see what it is. You see what it is. They want to abolish the monogamous family. They want to put the women into the public industry. No more domestic industry. Okay? No more private industry. Now again, even in ancient Africa, we had the balance between the public and the private. And even even what happened private was balanced in the sense of what is risky, what is power, what requires power, what requires risk, what requires force, what requires endurance. Okay? That's what Chekhov the Jump is saying. Give that to the man. But what they're saying is, look, no. Put the women in the public. Just destroy everything. And again, I don't mind this idea of the destruction of Europe. I don't mind it. It's just that you gotta peep what they're saying, because when they talk about destroying Europe, they're not really saying destroy Europe. They're saying take over Europe. These people take over Europe. And take over the world. Okay? That's what they're saying. And you got to ask yourself, do you want these people in charge of the world? No. You want an African system. See, we already have an African system. But again, remember that a lot of black folk are Marxists now, because this Marxism is ubiquitous, if you will. We thus have three principal forms of marriage, and so this is actually kind of technically the whole chapter, and he's just wrapping up the whole family chapter now. He says, we thus have three principal forms of marriage, which corresponds broadly to the three principal stages of human development. For the period of savagery, we have group marriage. For barbarism, pairing marriage. And for civilization, monogamy is supplemented by adultery and prostitution. Between pairing marriage and monogamy intervenes a period in the upper stage of barbarism when men have female slaves at their command and polygamy is practiced. As our whole presentation has shown, the progress which manifests itself in these successive forms is connected with the peculiarity that women, but not men, are increasingly deprived of the sexual freedom of group marriage. See, he's looking for group marriage. Women are deprived of the sexual freedom of group marriage. In fact, for men, and I think I might as well keep this quote, because what are they trying to do but fuck your women? I'll put it vulgar. What are they trying to do but fuck your women? This is what I said about the Trotskyists. Again, I heard about the Trotskyists when I was in high school. They were like, yeah, the Trotskyists are really just trying to fuck your women. What are they trying to do but fuck your women? When they say the sexual freedom of your wives. You understand? Think about the 60s in America. Think about the 60s in America and how, oh yeah, we were just all having sex. Every race coming together having sex. As our whole presentation, as the whole presentation has shown, the progress which manifests itself in the sense forms is connected with the peculiarity of women, but not men, increasingly deprived of their sexual freedom of group marriage. In fact, for men, group marriage actually still exists, even to this day. What for the woman is a crime entailing grave legal and social consequences is considered honorable in a man. And see, look at this. This is what you see the feminists say today. Or the double standard. You could go on Twitter right now, or X right now, and type up double standard of sex, and you'll see some woman today, some man today saying, a man could cheat and it's considered honorable, but a woman cheats and there's a grave social consequence. Anyway, so what is for a woman is a crime entailing grave legal and social consequences considered honorable in a man, or at the worst, a slight moral blemish which he cheerfully bears. And you see this. In fact, I was watching Creed because I was on the airplane and they had Creed 1 and Creed 2, and they were like, Creed was the son of Apollo Creed from the Rocky movie, and he was the legitimate son. Like, he was an orphan, basically Creed stepped out of his marriage, and they were like, well, what about Creed? He stepped out of his marriage. Is this going to blemish his thing? And they're like, it's just a small blemish. He's a man. Alright, but the more the heterism of the past is changed in our time by capitalist commodity production and brought into conformity with it, the more, that is to say, it is transformed into undisguised prostitution, the more demoralizing as its effect, as it demoralizes men far more than women. Among women, prostitution degrades only the unfortunate ones who become its victims, and even these by no means to the extent commonly believed, but it degrades the character of the whole male world. A long engagement, particularly in the 9 cases out of 10 of regular preparatory school for conjugal infidelity, is in 9 cases out of a long engagement, particularly in 9 cases out of 10, a regular preparatory school for conjugal infidelity. So they're basically saying that prostitution makes men, like men, are degraded by prostitution because we step out of our marriages with prostitutes. We are now approaching a social revolution. And what's interesting, there's a video from Japan, in fact, where the Japanese women are like, they would rather their husbands cheat on a prostitute than with a woman, like a woman who's not a prostitute, because you can't love a prostitute. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, it's okay. You know what I mean? And it's like whatever. And again, a lot of people believe that kind of stuff. It's like, because nobody really cares about sex like that. But anyway, we are now approaching a social revolution in which the economic foundations of monogamy, as they have social revolution. Pay attention. So I actually didn't read this part before. I read some of the other parts before. Obviously not the Agamemnon part and all that shit. But I read some of it before. But now I stopped reading because I was like, let me make a podcast. Because it was so boring. Real talk, I asked ChatGPT to summarize this, but ChatGPT said it was too damn long. So now I got to read it. I didn't want to read this shit, because it's fucking Marxist. But it is what it is. We are now approaching a social revolution in which the economic foundations of monogamy, as they have existed hitherto, will disappear just as surely as those of the complement prostitution. Monogamy arose from the concentration of considerable wealth in the hands of a single individual, a man, and from the needs to bequeath this wealth to the children of that man and of no other. For this purpose, the monogamy of the woman was required, not that of the man, so this monogamy of the woman did not in any way interfere with open or concealed polygamy on the part of the man, but by the transforming by far the greater portion, at any rate, of permanent heritable wealth, the means of production, into social property, the coming social revolution will reduce to a minimum all this anxiety about bequeathing and inheriting. Having arisen from economic causes, will monogamy then disappear when these causes disappear? So he's basically saying, let's see if I can copy this paragraph. He's basically saying, when these motherfuckers take over, and they never do, spoiler alert, but when they take over, and they make it so that men no longer have wealth, right? Men no longer have considerable wealth. Monogamy is no longer going to be a thing, right? So one might answer, not without reason, far from disappearing, it will, on the contrary, be realized completely. For with the transformation of the means of production into social property, they will disappear also wage labor, the proletariat, and therefore the necessity for a certain statistically calculable number of women to surrender themselves for money. Prostitution disappears. Monogamy, instead of collapsing, at last becomes a reality also for men. So he's like, look, because women are no longer going to be sleeping for money, like having sex with you for money, right? Because that's what he believes women are doing. And again, we kind of hear this, like if you guys, like shout out to Shoot the Breeze. If you guys know, it's actually coming on later this evening. But a lot of times they talk about how women are sometimes in relationships with men for money. You know what I mean? Or they want to pay for them, so on and so forth. And he's like, look, when we get rid of individual wealth, in a sense, right? When we get rid of wage labor, when we get rid of proletariat, when we get rid of this, so on and so forth, when women just have money already, they're not going to be sleeping around with other people's relationships because they're going to have it. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to need to. You know what I mean? So men and women are not going to be strictly monogamous. Now, again, a lot of times, now people know this, that a lot of affairs do not involve money. A lot of people know that sometimes, a sexy woman is just a sexy damn woman. You know what I mean? Or a sexy man is just a sexy damn man. No homo. But you get what I'm saying. So, in any case, let me just check, see if there's any comments. No comments. Alright, so, in any case, therefore, the position of men will be very much unaltered. Will be very much altered, sorry. But the position of women, of all women, also undergoes significant change. With the transfer of the means of production into common ownership, the single family ceases to be the economic unit of society. Private housekeeping is transformed into a social industry. The care and education of the children becomes a public affair. Society looks after all children alike, whether they are legitimate or not. This removes all the anxiety about the consequences, which today is the most essential social, moral, as well as economic factor that prevents a girl from giving herself completely to the man she loves. Will not that suffice to bring about the gradual growth of unconstrained sexual intercourse, and with it a more tolerant public opinion in regard to the maiden's honor and a woman's shame? You see that? Anyway. And finally, here have we not seen that in the modern world, monogamy and prostitution are indeed contradictions, but inseparable contradictions posed in the same state of society. The prostitution disappear without dragging monogamy with it into the abyss. So what he's saying is, look, your women are now going to be on the unconstrained sexual intercourse. They're going to be having sex with any guy, any socialist, any Marxist that comes along. You got to understand what they're saying. Here a new element comes into play, an element which at the time when monogamy was developing, existing at most in germ, individual sex love. So before the Middle Ages, we cannot speak of individual sex love. That personal beauty, close intimacy, similarity of taste, and so forth awakened in the people of opposite sex desire for sexual intercourse, that men and women were not totally indifferent regarding the partner with whom they enter into the most intimate relationship. That goes without saying. But it's still a long way to our sexual love. Throughout the whole of antiquity, marriages were arranged by the parents, and the partners calmly accepted their choice. What little love there was between husband and wife in antiquity is not so much subjective inclination as objective duty, not the cause of the marriage, but its corollary. Love relationships in the modern sense only occur in antiquity outside official society. The shepherds of whose joy and sorrows and love Theocritus and Marcius sing, and Daphnis and Chloe of Longus are all slaves who have no part in the state, the free citizen sphere of life. Except among slaves, we find love affairs only as products of the disintegration of the old world and carried on with women who also stand outside official society, with hatiari, that is, with foreigners or free slaves. In Athens, from the eve of its decline, in Rome under the Caesars, if there were any real love affairs between free men and free women, these occurred only in the course of adultery. And to the classical love poets of antiquity, old Anacreon, sexual love in our sense mattered so little that it did not even matter to him which sex his beloved was. Oh, look at that, some gay shit. Sexual love in our sense mattered so little it did not even matter to him which sex his beloved was. So he's now saying it doesn't matter, you get what I'm saying? Like really, real sex love is between anybody, man or woman, whatever, dog, man and woman, dog, child, whatever. I understand what these Marxists are saying. Read between the lines. Now, I'm not going to say he mentioned animalia and homosexuality. He did mention homosexuality here. He does seem to condemn pedestry earlier, but again, take it 2 steps forward and you might say, there's no real reasoning behind condemning that if you're going by, this logic. Because before it was, I'm going to have, at least you could say man and woman together builds a family. But now he's like, no, you don't even need that family. You just need people having sex. Okay? You need free love. He's like, the best examples, peep it. The best examples are adultery. You see what I'm saying? Free love, real love affairs were only adultery. Or the slaves had free love. When it had no property involved. You see what I'm saying? Just look at what he's trying to get to you. Our sexual love differs essentially from the simple sexual desire, the eros of the ancients. In the first place, it assumes that the person loved returns the love. To this extent, the woman is on the equal footing with the man. Whereas in the eros of antiquity, she was often not even asked. Secondly, our sexual love has a degree of intensity and duration which makes both lovers feel the non-possession and separation are a great, if not the greatest calamity to possess one another. They risk high stakes, even life itself. In the ancient world, this happened only, if at all, in adultery. And finally, there arises a new moral standard in the judgment of a sexual relationship. We do not only ask, was it within or outside marriage, but also, did it spring from love and reciprocated love or not? Of course, this new standard has fared no better in feudal or bourgeois practice than all the other standards of morality. It is ignored, but neither does it fare any worse. It is recognized just as much as there are in theory on paper, and for the present, it cannot ask anything more. So basically, he's saying this. In this Marxist future, right? Man, woman, they'd have sex, no And if a woman gets pregnant, she just dumps her kid off to the state, and she goes on about her life. You understand? The state takes care of her kid, and she just goes on about her life. Now you might say, oh, well, she might still live with the state, and the state just provides her money. Sure, but it means nothing. And of course, you got to understand that this doesn't even make any sense from a realistic perspective of, well, what about if it's costly? What about if a woman's just popping out babies? And of course, don't forget that diseases are a real thing. But of course, you say to yourself, look, if a woman, basically, you could go ejaculate in a prostitute. Okay, ejaculate in a prostitute while she's ovulating. Ejaculate in a prostitute while she's ovulating, and then leave her to the state, because the state's going to take care of her child. And the prostitute's going to have another kid, another kid, another kid, another kid. Now, if you're ejaculating raw in a prostitute, you're bound to get a disease. You know what I'm saying? Because a bunch of dudes is ejaculating raw in a prostitute, they're all bound to get a disease. But it is what it is. This is what they want for you. You gotta just peep game. You have to peep game. So let's keep going. At the point where antiquity broke off its advance to sexual love, the Middle Age took it up again in adultery. We have, adultery is the example that they're looking at. We've already described, but also an end of marriage. So you get what I'm saying. We've already described the knightly love which gave rise to the Sons of Dawn. From the love which strives to break up marriage to the love which is set in the foundation, there is still a long road which chivalry never fully traversed. Even when we pass from the frivolous Latins to the virtuous Germans, we find in the Nibelungen, whatever, that although it is her heart, Kriemhild is as much in love with Siegfried as he is with her, yet when Gunther announces that he has promised her to a knight he does not name, she simply replies, "You have no need to ask me as you bid me, so will I ever be, whom you, Lord, give me as a husband, him will I gladly take in troth." So he's like, there's not consent. It never enters her head that her love can be ever considered. Gunther asks for Brunhild in marriage, and Edsel for Kriemhild, though they have never seen them. Similarly, in Gudrun, Siebert of Ireland asks for the Norwegian Ute, whom he has never seen, Hetel of Hegelen for Hilde of Ireland, and finally Siegfried of Morland, Harmlet of Ormony, and Herwig of Sealand for Gudrun. And here, Gudrun's acceptance of Herwig is for the first time voluntary. As a rule, the young prince's bride is selected by his parents if they are still living, or if not, by the prince himself, with the advice of the great feudal lords, who have a weighty word to say in all these cases. Nor can it be otherwise. For the knight or baron, or for the prince of the land himself, marriage is a political act, an opportunity to increase power by new alliance. The interest of the house must be decisive, not the wishes of an individual. What chance, then, is there for love to have the final word in the making of a marriage? And again, you got to ask yourself, so that's another thing I realized. Love is easy. Love is easy. In fact, you guys could probably tell, I'm a lovable guy. A lot of you are dudes, so you don't feel any sort of love towards me. But a lot of women might be like, hey, you know what? I could love only. Of course, I'm a lovable guy. But you have to understand that marriage should not actually be about love. Marriage should actually have a utilitarian, a utility to it. Like I said, I could love a woman, and then both of us live in a situation where we don't have a clean house. You actually do want somebody cleaning the house. And I mean, sure, you could say, Oni, why don't you clean the house? Okay, but maybe I don't want to. A lot of people don't want to clean. Like I said, even the woman I lived with did not want to clean. She said she cleaned every night, but sometimes she'd leave the dishes overnight. I didn't approve of it, but she sometimes would do that. And like I said, she would hire some, like when it comes to washing clothes, she didn't even wash clothes. Now, even I would wash clothes. I didn't, but even I would. Like I did back when I was in Africa. But, a lot of people were like, hey, why don't you just get a woman to wash your clothes? But, I wasn't, like I don't know people like that, right? But either way, it's like she didn't wash clothes herself. And that's fine. The point is that you have a person in your house that they don't have to cook and clean. They might want to, they might not want to. They don't have to cook and clean. But the reason why I'm saying this is to say that you have this person here to manage, like to be in charge of that part of the life, because you don't want to be in charge of it. You know what I mean? You want to throw your clothes in the laundry, and then somebody else picks it up. Cause see me, I'm trying to busy myself with like I said, the public works, the public industry. I'm trying to do my podcast. I'm trying to write my books. I'm trying to move on my life. I can't be on that. Oh, let me do the laundry, so on and so forth. Whereas this woman might be like, you know what? I want to do the laundry and watch Netflix. I want to do that. See, I can't be like, I want to do laundry and watch Netflix. But say if I did want to live that life, like, cause there's a lot of dudes who's like, I just want to play 2K. I just want to play NBA 2K. And so they might get involved with a woman who goes out and works. But if a man wants to play 2K, he should be doing some laundry, obviously. But of course, that's obviously gonna be, that's controversial right there, because that's the reversal of the roles right there. But you see what it is. Anyway, but I mean, I don't mind if a woman were to say that, But that's the problem that we all have, is that you have these men who are not working as much as their women. Like, when women become breadwinners, that's when you got a problem. Cause how do you justify her doing domestic work while she's also doing public work? And if you're not doing public work, the same thing holds. See, it's different. You could justify one person does public work, one person does private work. It's different when you're asking one person to do public and private work, and especially if you're not doing public work. That's when there's a problem. The same thing holds for the guild member in the medieval towns. The very privileges protecting him, the guild charters with all their clauses and rubrics, the intricate distinction legally separating him from other guilds, from the members of his own guild or from the journeyman and apprentice, already made the circle narrow enough within which he could look for a suitable wife, and who in the circle was the most suitable was decided under his complicated system, most certainly not by his individual preference, but by the family interest. Okay? And again, looking for family interest is not a bad thing. In the vast majority of cases, therefore, marriage remained, up to the close of the Middle Ages, what it had been from the start, a matter which was not decided by the partners. In the beginning, people were already both married to an entire group of the opposite sex. In the latter form of group marriage, similar relations probably existed, but within the group continually contracting, in the pairing marriage, it was customary for the mothers to settle the marriages of their children. Here, too, the decisive consideration... Oh, I think that's what he means by pairing marriage. Maybe it's... No, I don't think it's that. Here, too, the decisive consideration are the new ties of kinship, which are given the young pair a stronger position in the gens and the tribe. And when, with the preponderance of private over communal property and the interest in the bequeathal, father right and monogamy gained supremacy, the dependence of marriages on economic consideration became complete. The form of marriage by purchase disappears. The actual practice is steadily extended, until not only the woman, but also the man acquires a price, not according to his personal qualities, but according to his property, that the mutual affection of the people concerned should be the one paramount reason for marriage, outweighing everything else, was and always has been absolutely unheard of in the practice of the ruling classes, that some of the things only happened in romance, or among the oppressed classes who did not count. Such was the, and of course you guys see what we know what he's saying. Such was the state of things encountered by capitalist production when it began to prepare itself after the epoch of geographical discoveries to win world power by world trade and manufacture. One would suppose that this manner of marriage exactly suited it, and so it did. And yet there are no limits to the irony of history. Capitalist production itself was to make the decisive breach in it. By changing all things into commodities, it dissolved all inherited and traditional relationships, and in place of time-honored custom and historic right, it set up purchase and sale free contract. And the English jurist H.S. Maine thought he had made a tremendous discovery when he said that our whole progress in comparison with former epochs consisted in the fact that we had passed from status to contract, from inherited to freely contracted conditions, which, insofar as it correct, was already in the Communist Manifesto. So he's like, look, we already wrote that in the Communist Manifesto in chapter 2. So he's like, hey, the English are so, we already wrote that shit in 1840. Shut the fuck up. But a contract requires people who can dispose freely of their persons. Whew. So he's like, but yeah. So a contract has to be like a contract has to be between free people, equal people, and it can't be between unequal people. That's what they're saying. Okay, but of course, it is what it is. Like all people are already unequal. We already know that. You and me are not equal. Just go by mathematics, right? 1 and 1 is equal. Okay? 1 and 2 is not equal. You know what I'm saying? So even if you were to say, hey, look at I got 23 chromosomes, you have 23 chromosomes. But my first chromosome is different from your first chromosome. So we're not equal. We have we have an equal number of chromosomes. We don't have equal chromosomes. Okay? We're not equal. But anyway, so by contract requires people who can dispose freely of their persons, actions, and possessions and meet each other for a footing on equal rights. To create these free and equal people was one of the main tasks of capitalist production, even though at the start it was carried out only half-consciously and under a religious disguise at that. From the time of the Lutheran and Calvinist Reformation, the principle was established that man is only fully responsible for his actions when he acts with complete freedom of will, and that is the moral duty to resist all coercion in the moral act. But how did this fit into the hitherto existing practice and the arrangement of marriages? Marriage, according to the bourgeois conception, was a contract, a legal transaction, and the most important one of all, because it disposed of two human beings, body and mind, for life. Formally, it is true, the contract at the time was entered into voluntarily, without the assent of the persons concerned. Nothing can be done. But everyone knew only too well how this assent was obtained and who were the real contracting parties in the marriage. But if real freedom of decision was required for all other contracts, then why not for this? Had not the two young people to be coupled also the right to dispose freely of themselves, of their bodies and organs? Had not chivalry brought sex love into fashion? It was not its proper bourgeois form, in contrast to the chivalry's adulteries, love, the love of husband and wife. And if it was the duty of married people to love each other, was it not equally the duty of lovers to marry each other and nobody else? Did not this right of the lovers stand higher than the right of parents, relations, and other traditional marriage brokers and matchmakers? In the right of free personal discrimination broke boldly into the church and religion, how should it halt before the intolerable claim of the older generation to dispose of this body, soul, property, happiness, and unhappiness of the younger generation? Now again, you can find love anywhere. Love is easy to find. It's only a question of when you're marrying somebody for life. Like, again, your marriage, you're marrying the person who's going to be the grandparent of your grandchildren. You understand? The parent to your children. And the qualities of the parent to your children are going to be different. Like, for instance, you say what you will. The woman in Africa right now was so good to my son. So good to my son. Those same big meals you see. Like, my son gained, I think, 20 pounds too. No, I think he gained like 10 pounds. Yeah, 10 pounds, 20 pounds. He was eating well, eating good. She was cleaning the bathroom. Everything. It was good. It was good. She read to him. She did this. She did that. That's what you want from a wife. Oh man, I just want to have sex with anybody. Shut the fuck up, you fucking immature piece of shit. I shouldn't say that to no grown person because he's dead, so it don't matter. But you guess what I'm saying. Anyway, these questions inevitably rose at a time which was loosening all the old ties of society and undermining all traditional conceptions. The world had suddenly grown almost 10 times bigger. Instead of one quadrant of a hemisphere, the whole globe lay before the gaze of the West Europeans, who hastened to take the other 7 quadrants into their possession. As with and you see that? The white people took over all 8 quadrants. I don't know why he's saying 8 quadrants, but it is what it is. I'm trying to figure out how we got 8 quadrants, but I guess probably because it's a sphere. I don't know. But, because, quad really means 4. But let me see. I guess, yeah, I can see it, because I'll just explain that for people who might not get it. Basically, you got 4 quadrants on one part of the circle, and on the other part of the circle, you have 4 quadrants. You see what I'm saying? And so then you have 8 quadrants. Now, technically, how would you do... technically a quadrant really would be if you split the Earth, you're looking at a circle, and you split it in half, then that would be 4 quadrants, really. But he's looking at it another way. He's saying that they're like the upper... the northwest quadrant. I don't know what direction you put it, but they're basically, yeah, you get what I'm saying. So, and with the one quadrant of the hemisphere, the whole globe lay at the gaze of the West Europeans, who hastened to take the other 7 quadrants into their possession. And with the old narrow barriers of their homeland fell also, you see, FL, also the 1,000-year-old barriers of the prescribed medieval way of thought. To the outward And with the old narrow barriers of their homeland fell also the 1,000-year barriers of the prescribed medieval way of thought. So the outward and the inward eye of man opened an infinitely wider horizon. What did a young man care about the approval of respectability or honorable guild privileges handed down for generations when the wealth of India beckoned to him, the gold and silver mines of Mexico and Potosi? For the bourgeoisie, it was a time of knight errantly. They too had their romance and their raptures of love, but on a bourgeois footing, and the last analysis with bourgeois aims. So it came about that the rising bourgeoisie, especially in the Protestant countries, where existing conditions had been most severely shaken, increasingly recognized freedom of contract also in marriage and carried it into effect in the manner described. Marriage remained class marriage, but within the class, the partners were conceded a certain degree of freedom of choice, and on paper, in ethical theory and in poetic description, nothing was more immutably established than that every marriage is immoral, which does not rest on mutual sexual love, and on paper, in ethical theory and in poetic description, nothing more immutably established than with every marriage is moral, which does not rest on mutual sexual love and really free arrangement of the husband and wife. In short, the love marriage was proclaimed as a human right, and indeed not only a droit de l'homme, one of the rights of man, but also for once in a way, a droit de la femme, one of the rights of women. So women and men had a right to love marriages. So this human right, however, differed in one respect from all other so-called human rights. While the latter in practice remained restricted to the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, and are directly or indirectly curtailed for the oppressed class, the proletariat, in the case of the former, the irony of history plays another of its tricks. The ruling class remains dominated by the familiar economic influence, and therefore only in exceptional cases does it provide instances of really freely contracted marriages, while among the oppressed class, as we have seen, these marriages are the rule. So, again, he's talking about the bourgeois married different from the thing. Restricted to the ruling class, directly or indirectly curtailed for the proletariat. In the case of the former, the irony of history plays another tricks, blah, blah, blah. Full freedom of marriage can therefore only be generally established when the abolition of capitalist production and of the property relations created by it has removed all the accompanying economic considerations which still exert such a powerful influence on the choice of marriage partner. For then, there is no other motive left except mutual inclination. So, basically, there's still that... in a way, he's still saying marry, right? He's still saying marriage, but of course, not really. In real practice, this might lead into polygamy again, right? Or not polygamy, but like everybody has open marriages, right? Which is something that we see today. A lot of people talk about open relationships and open marriages, but what he's saying is this. This is the thing that the Marxists do. They question: can you consent? Like for instance, look at the definitions of rape. Like some of the definitions of rape are, for instance, if for a child, like if a child and an adult, can a child consent? No, right? And you could agree with that, obviously, right? But then you have the question of, well, what about if a boss, like if your boss says have sex with me, right? Can you consent? And the question becomes. And a lot of people will say, no, you can't either because, if the boss is going to fire you if you don't have sex, then obviously it's not consent, right? So now it comes between men and women. And it becomes, well, if the property relations are different, right? Or if the man is richer than the woman, can she consent? Now, the question is this. She does consent because she wants access to the property, but it becomes, well, if there's no property difference, if there's no wealth disparity, then would she even mess with you? Would she even talk with you? And the way how it really goes in modern society is this, that a woman really, particularly like a woman doesn't have good access to money, she's more saying, hey, you know what? I actually would consent to this guy if he had money. Or because he has money and because he's a good guy. Whereas if he was a good guy and he didn't have money, then it'd be harder for me to consent. So the Marxists do have a point here. But again, the practicality of this is missing. And again, another part of it is this. You want people to have property. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, the thing is this. I want you guys to understand this. I went around Africa trying to find a good piece of land to live in. Good land is so hard to find. Okay? You want to own a good piece of land. All right? You want to own a good piece of land. The person who tells you should not own something doesn't understand that you want to own a good piece of land, because you could end up with a shitty piece of land. In fact, I was crossing through this area, and they were next to a giant butchery. The place smelled like rotting meat. The whole freaking city smelled like rotting meat. I would not want to live there. Okay? But you understand, like, there's so much that goes into this. One, where do you open up a rotting meat butchery? Two, where do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much that goes into it. Like, if you're talking about a real civilization, a real society that you're living in, you have to have some sort of rules when it comes to land ownership. You have to have some sort of rules when it comes to commercial zoning. You do not want to be next to the butcher. You do not want to be next to the train station. You don't want to be next to the ironsmith who works all night. You don't want to be next to a lot of things. You don't want to be next to that fucking drumming circle. You don't want to be next to a church or a mosque because they're fucking loud. Okay? You don't want, like, there's certain things you want to do, and so you want to stake out your land, and you want, like, there's a lot to it. But anyway, we're going to keep going. And as sexual love is by its nature exclusive, although at present this exclusiveness is fully realized only in the woman, so you just keep saying that a man is sleeping around, and I'm not saying the men aren't, but you see what kind of time he's on. The marriage is based on sexual love is by its nature individual marriage. The marriage based on, so we have seen how right Bakofan was in regarding the advance from group marriage to individual marriage is primarily due to the woman. Only the step from pairing marriage to monogamy can be put down to the credit of the men. And historically, the essence of this was to make the position of the women worse and the infidelities of the men easier. If now the economic considerations also disappear, which made women put up with the habitual infidelity of their husbands, concerned for their own means of existence and still more for their children's future, then according to all previous experiences, the equality of the women thereby achieved will tend infinitely more to make men really monogamous than to make women polyandrous. Now, again, no, because here's the thing. A man might want to have threesomes. A woman might want to have threesomes. In fact, a lot of women want to have threesomes. In fact, you see that cuckold shit he was talking about earlier. A lot of these women are in relationships where the men have the predominant wealth. A lot of these are wealthy-ass men. And they're letting other men fuck their women in front of them. Okay? So what are you fucking talking about? You're talking about... Now, again, he's in 1884, so I can't really say, hey, look at what's happening in 2024. But yeah, you get it. But what will quite certainly disappear from monogamy are all the features stamped upon it through its origins, its property relations. There are, in the first place, supremacy of the man, and secondly, indissolubility. The supremacy of the man in marriage is a simple consequence of his economic supremacy, and with the abolition of the latter will disappear, of course, of itself. The indissolubility of marriage is partly a consequence of the economic situation in which monogamy arose, partly a tradition from the period when the connection between this economic situation and monogamy was not yet fully understood and was carried to extremes under religious form. Today, it is already broken through at 1,000 points. If only the marriage based on love is moral, then also only the marriages in which love continues. But the intense emotion of individual sex love varies very much in duration from one individual to another, especially among men. Sorry, I dazed that. I was thinking about something. It's hard. This reading is not easy. So I'm glad you guys stuck through. Appreciate you guys. This is like 3 hours. It's hard. I'm hungry. You know what I'm saying? But what will certainly disappear from monogamy are all the features stamped onto it through its origin in property relations. There are, in the first place, supremacy of the man. Secondly, indissolubility, right? The ability that you can't have divorces, right? The supremacy of the man in marriage is a simple consequence of economic supremacy, and with the abolition of the latter will disappear of itself. The indissolubility of marriage is partly a consequence of the economic situation in which monogamy arose, partly tradition from the period when the connection between the economic situation and monogamy was not yet fully understood. It was carried to extremes under religious form. Today, it is already broken through 1,000 points. If only the marriage based on love is moral, then also only the marriage in which love continues. But the intense emotion of individual sex love very much in duration from one individual to another, especially among men, and if affection definitely comes to an end or is supplanted by a new passionate love, separation is a benefit for both partners as well as for society. Only people will then be spared having to wade through the useless mire of a divorce case. So he's like, you're not both partners as well as society. Only people, yeah. So he's like, affection definitely comes to an end or is supplanted by a new passionate love. So you see, you no longer have to even stay in your marriage. You can go for the adulterous relationship, of your own free will, and there's no divorce. It's not a marriage. It's not a marriage. And you're no longer doing it for the kids. You're no longer doing it for the grandkids. You're just doing it. It's ridiculous. This is what they're pushing. So, and this is the last 3 paragraphs, I guess. So, really 2 paragraphs. This is a quote from the paragraph, but you get what I'm saying. What we can now conjecture about the way in which sexual relations will be ordered after the impending overthrow of capitalist production is mainly of a negative character, limited for the most part to what will disappear. But what will there be new? That will be answered when a new generation has grown up. A generation of men who never in their lives have known what it was to buy a woman, surrender with money, or any other social instrument of power. A generation of women who have never known what it's like to give themselves to economic consequences, to give themselves to a man from any other consideration than real love, or to refuse to give themselves to their lover from fear of the economic consequences. When these people are in the world, they will care precious little what anybody today thinks they ought to do. They will make their own practice and their corresponding public opinion about the practice of each individual. That will be the end of it. You see, he's like, we don't have a real plan for how things are going to be. We just know we're going to get rid of what things are today. Right? Even though, again, if you're being realistic about the value of land and how you want your own land and how you want to pass on your own land, or your own house, and your own well-being, and there's access to food, and food is not unlimited, and you want access to blah, 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 and you want this guy, and you want this woman. Like, for instance, the woman I have, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. I want her for myself. I don't want to share it with you guys. And right now, I'm not in the country. So, does that mean she should be fucking around? No, I don't want to be fucking around. I mean, of course, obviously, even I recognize, well, I'm not in the country. But I don't think she's doing that, or I don't think she wants to do that. But, that's the world. But still, that's part of, we all have a Marxist, background to us. Now, let us, however, return to Morgan, from whom we have moved a considerable distance. The historical investigation of the social institutions developed during the period of civilization goes beyond the limits of this book. How monogamy fares during this epoch, therefore, only occupies him very briefly. He, too, sees in the further development of the monogamous family a step forward, an approach to complete equality of the sexes, though he does not regard this goal as attained. But he says, when the fact is accepted that the family has passed through 4 successive forms and is now in a 5th, the question at once arises whether this form can be permanent in the future. The only answer that can be given is that it must advance as society advances and change as society changes, even as it has done in the past. It is the creature of a social system and will reflect its culture. As the monogamian family has improved greatly since the commencement of civilization and very sensibly in modern times, it is at least supposable that it is capable of still further improvement until the equality of the sexes is attained. Should the monogamian family and the distant future fail to answer the requirements of society, it is impossible to predict the nature of its successor. And that's pretty much the entire book. Now, this is the book, for you guys who don't know, this is The Origin of the Family, Private State, and Property, published in 1884, and you can see this was the chapter on the family. Then he goes into the Iroquois, he goes into the Greeks, the rise of the Athenian family, the formation of the Germans, barbarism, and this is the recently discovered case of the group marriages, and this you can see is, he's talking about the Native Americans, I think, at some point. So you see the Mongoloids, Native Americans, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the Dravidians, shout out to the Dravidians, but that's pretty much it. So that's the podcast. Appreciate you guys for stepping through, coming through. I hope you guys liked it. It was interesting. A lot of reasonable quotes. I don't think I quoted anything from the last from the last paragraph though, or the last few paragraphs that might be useful. But we're gonna talk about communism. I don't know what I should do tomorrow, because I'm supposed to have a podcast tomorrow too. But appreciate you guys for stepping through. Thanks for welcoming me back to America. And until next time, I'll just tell you guys, Shem Hotep. Oh, sorry. Let me see if I can answer the title. Why do Marxists condemn monogamous relationships? Is it right for Africa? So again, we had monogamous relationships before them. Why do they condemn it? They believe that women can't consent. And I mean, it's not unreasonable, but you sometimes have to realize that there's a method to the madness. You're gonna have private property, whether you like it or not. Because I can tell you guys this: the land that I was looking into, some of the land was very, very slanted. You understand? Like some of it was very, very sloped, if you will. Land is so uneven. Some of the land was far away. You had to cross a mountain. Another land, if you had to drive off the main road, it was really, really far. You couldn't walk to the main road, right? And the main road is where you get a bus. Another piece of land was 3 blocks away from the main road. There's a lot of inequality in land, to the point where you want to find a system where you can get a good piece of land. And the reality is this: if nobody can own anything, you're not going to get a good piece of land. Okay? You're not. Anyway, that's pretty much the podcast. So thanks everybody for coming through. Oh, let me remind you guys of this. So anyway, that's pretty much the entire podcast. So thanks everybody for stopping by. And of course, Shem Hotep, Anku Jah Seneb Neb, Amen, Ma'at, Dua, Necher.